Ray was a brave and powerful knight, but one day he underestimated his opponent, decided to skip training, thought nothing would happen, but ended up losing. That day he accepted not only defeat, but also the fact that his life would never be the same again. The Empress made him a servant of the victor, who turned out to be a tyrant. Yana took everything from him, mocked him day after day, when suddenly he notices that not only has he gotten used to this life, but he has also started to fall in love with her. A week before that, Homun, a country with a 500-year history, Ray was the eldest son of a family that took part in the founding of the state and a general who was ready to sacrifice himself for the country. But Homun, with its ancient history, fell at the hands of Hassel, a union of tribes. They were led by the young Queen Hanumi, 14 nations, 7 cities, intending to unite all 14 nations and conquer the Central Plains. And the one who had been a gladiator slave in the past was the one who best contributed to the realization of her ambitions. Her name means the Cliff of Death, where she rose after destroying 10,000 enemy soldiers with thousands of troops. Yana say her very name inspired fear. People were afraid to even talk about her, so high was her reputation. After the end of the war against the Heman, the task of uniting the 14 nations was accomplished. In connection with this, Empress Hanumi decided to give a special award to General Yan, who made the greatest contribution to the victory. She plans to give the defeated human general Ray the honor of becoming General Yanasai's eternal servant. For the guy, it was very humiliating. He expected anything but to serve the girl for the rest of his life. Yanasai expressed her gratitude, but she already had so many servants, so the girl hinted that it was not necessary. The Empress made it clear that her decision was not up for discussion, and if that's what she wanted, then that's how it would be. She gave her only one warning. You can do whatever you want with this person. Ask him for anything, but you can't harm him. The guy must be alive, and if it happens otherwise, I will have to answer for it personally to the Empress. It is already clear that the Empress is very powerful. She only recognizes her position and does not tolerate when people start arguing with her. Naturally, it is easier to accept her offer than to refuse. In any case, another assistant will not be superfluous. Some guards can't comprehend that from today on, the general who defeated the country will become the servant of the General Yana. In fact, everything is not as good as it seems. The girl is famous for the fact that everyone she invites to her place leaves her with far from a smile on their face. Everyone who enters the barracks, captivated by the beauty of the girl, comes out covered in blood, and this is the least that she usually does to these people. She is so cruel that she is not afraid to mock those who are taller and seemingly stronger than her. She is a fearless person, although looking at her, it is impossible to think that she is so crazy. And in the meantime, she has already returned to herself, and today she has a new, as she calls them, servant, but not quite in the usual sense. The guy is offered a small bowl of rice, but he, all tied up and uncovered, refuses because he would rather die of hunger than eat food from her. Yana just makes fun of him, gives him very small portions, and carefully examines his body because she is already used to everything else. Words cannot describe how helpless Ray feels. It is too humiliating for him. He will never be able to accept the fact that now he is an ordinary servant who has no rights. Now he is like a toy that she will visit every day. Since the guy does not know anything yet, she told him the main thing. When the mistress comes, she needs to be pleased, and it does not matter whether he likes it or not. She keeps everyone in prison like this, gives them freedom, and to make sure they obey her unquestioningly, she sometimes brings food when she sees that people can't take it anymore. The guy immediately said that while he was here, he would not take a sip of water, would not eat a spoonful of food, and would endure pain just so as not to be humiliated. When the girl said that it wasn't water, but real poison, Ray got a little tense because there was nothing stopping her from making him drink it. She didn't even need his consent for that. Yana has never met such fearless people. She thought it would be easy with him, but he is brave and she doesn't like it. She gets irritated by people like that, and in order not to waste time on him, she plans to quietly destroy him and then report that he died a few months later. He will live only if he obeys her and begs for mercy. It will not and does not happen any other way. Ray doesn't know yet who he's dealing with. Before, she seemed cruel to him only on the battlefield. But in life, she's also crazy, and it's not surprising if the guy regrets that he didn't die earlier. Now he will suffer from being disgraced day after day, looking at her smile, which appears only when he is in pain. A small amount of poison flows down his neck. His skin begins to burn, and she deliberately spills the poison past him to bring him as much suffering as possible. Just think, Yana hasn't even started to make fun of him yet. They're just getting to know each other so he can get used to how he'll have to live the rest of his life. The girl said that she had heard how handsome he was, but for her, beauty lies in only one thing, in what is located much lower than the face. She really likes to see his red face, his muscles trying to tear apart everything that binds him. And of course, a look full of hatred, rage, and a desire to take revenge for everything she did to him. And that's not all. She has a small gift for him, which will now be with him constantly until she herself decides to take it away. Or more precisely, remove it. Ray still can't comprehend that the polite girl who communicated with the Empress turned out to be a real tyrant. He doesn't know where she gets so much hatred for a person who hasn't done anything bad to her personally. The guy thought that was it. He would stay here until the end of the day. But she had something with her that was even scary to look at. It's a special ring to put on the place she liked the most about him. And the most interesting thing is that the Empress gave it to her for some holiday. I don't even want to imagine how many people she put this ring on. The girl looked at how she looked on him and for the first time made a compliment, although it would have been better if she hadn't done it. He is in a lot of pain. Unbearably, everything is terribly compressed there. It is impossible to move or breathe normally. And in order for him to get more, as she says, pleasure, Yana begins to tickle him and squeeze where he is most sensitive. The mere thought that this will happen every day, and maybe even several times, just makes me not want to live. It's not funny anymore. He asks her to put it in his hands, although he understands that for him it's just an empty phrase. Yana says that she already wants to be born when her friend, no matter how it sounds, is on the edge and something starts dripping from him. Words cannot describe how disgusting it is for him to hear this. He begins to go completely mad, and it seems that just a little more and he will get out of these chains. And it's still not enough for her. Yana is already asking her assistant what else she can think of. Supposedly, Ray hasn't yet fully understood who he's dealing with and that he can't yell at her like that. In the end, they came up with the idea of putting him on a chair and tying him up in a new way, which means everything just continues. She is not satiated with his screams. The girl loves emotions, and even more, she loves to realize that she creates them herself. Ray is so weak that he doesn't even have the strength to get up. He fell to the floor and doesn't even raise his head to see what they've already come up with. As usual, she doesn't say what awaits him, and she never took off the ring, and this turned out to be a real test for him. He wants her to experience for just a second how he feels now. Suddenly, Yana has already come up with the next task for him. She wants him to touch himself and get pleasure, and also make sounds and look straight into her eyes. Ray doesn't know what to call her anymore, so that she would feel at least a little offended, and so that she would understand that everything she does is already too much. He says that she won't see anything like that. She can beat him for it as much as she wants, but she won't see anything like that. He is also very embarrassed by the fact that her assistant is always nearby. The man never turns away, although no one forces him to look at all this. Yana clearly has some problems. She can't live a day without seeing someone cute tied up in this room. If the guy had known earlier what was waiting for him, he would have taken the opportunity and hit her hard enough to make her lose consciousness for at least a couple of days or more. Such people should not be given freedom. It needs to be locked up somewhere in a remote place, but it is unlikely that anyone will succeed. The girl thought that he didn't quite understand what she wanted to see, decided to show everything with her own hands, and after that, he would have to do it himself. If there was a chance, he would never have allowed her to touch him there. It was disgusting. So much so that he even started to cry. This is some kind of mockery. Normal people don't behave like this. Only tyrants and those who have problems with their heads. Ray tries to figure out how to escape from here, but there are a lot of guards here, and they almost never leave him untied. He has to try not to respond to her touch. If she sees that it causes him any sensations, it will only happen more often. He wants to scream, beat, run, break, smash. The guy is tied up, and he also tries not to show how humiliating all this is for him. In addition to this, Yana promised that someday it would become so unbearable for him that he would simply die from suffering, and the sooner this happens, the better for her. Not only does she touch him in a place where he would never allow her to touch, but she also does it very roughly, with all her force. His mouth is already dry. He has no strength to resist. His face is all red. Sweat is running down his body. All his thoughts are only about how all this should stop and as soon as possible. She tells that there is a special spell on that very ring. To remove it, you need the owner's saliva, and this is even more disgusting than everything he heard before. This item is specially designed and created to prevent the escape of the one who wears this ring. Suddenly, he asked a very convenient question. Does she like that she is hated by almost everyone who has been in this room over the years? And not only, she replied that she was never interested in people's opinions, especially those who read her badly or speak badly about her. In her direction, she accepts only compliments and gifts, nothing more. Meanwhile, in the end, he must complete that very task. Ani redo everything that she just showed him, and only after that, she may let him go. Ray resists. He doesn't want to do this, especially on her initiative and in the presence of a stranger man. Yana's very tired. She asks the assistant to bring a chair. Probably wants to watch carefully then how everything will happen. He really doesn't want to humiliate himself in front of an enemy, and a girl at that. But if he doesn't do it, he knows it will only get worse. You can see how she likes to look at handsome guys who are completely at her disposal and can't refuse her anything. And that same poison that he has at the beginning, Because of it, he no longer has the strength to resist. It acts in such a way that a person very quickly agrees to what he is asked to do. Just yesterday, the guy couldn't even imagine what would happen to him the next day. Life is too unpredictable, even too. He imagined everything a little differently and had no idea that such a seemingly sweet girl could turn out to be a crazy person who has no boundaries in anything. Ray used to not allow himself to cry even in private. But now the situation is a little different. They just flow by themselves. He did everything she asked. Now he asked to release him, but she is not going to do it. She said that it is not enough. The guy felt that he was deceived. He listened and did everything as she ordered. But in the end, she didn't like something. He already has no idea what's wrong. He looks at her with exhausted eyes and is ready to do anything, just to finally get away from here. The assistant brought her a table. She asked him to put it right in front of Ray's chair and tie his hands again. Even the man does not remember a single case when the mistress sat opposite her servants, especially after she had already promised to let someone go. He silently watches all this, and in the meantime, the guy's last drop of patience has run out. Although it seemed that this would happen much earlier, he warned her not to come any closer. He was strong enough to break her neck in one move, and if that didn't scare her, then she could come closer. The guy still doesn't know her very well. She's already heard a lot of things like that. So this was also just empty words, and she doesn't care at all how strong he is and what he can do to her. So that he wouldn't be so impudent, she immediately hit him in the face and remembered who was the boss here and who had the right to dictate the terms. Here he must obey her and not the other way around, especially since I only have to give an order, and dozens of knights will come here who will be able to pacify him. Then she looked again at that very part of his body that had been bothering her from the very beginning. Ray thought she was going to do something now, but the mistress, as she calls herself, started to go somewhere under the guise of having some business. He wants to hope that she was just scared of him, although if so, she wouldn't have hit him so hard and so close. He doesn't want to admit it, but Ray is starting to get used to the environment. But that doesn't mean he plans to stay here. He doesn't feel it anymore. He's hot because he's overexcited, or it's really that stuffy here. They've also closed the door, and there's not a single window around to air out the room. Some time passed. The girl came back again. This time she took a flashlight with her because there is no built-in lighting here. The guy didn't even react to her. He just raised his head and thought what would happen this time. She promised that we would have everything today, but she came again. Usually the girl never made fun of newcomers like that, but today Ray clearly interested her, so much so that she even came to him for the second time that day, and literally a few hours later. This time she untied his hands, gave him a little freedom, and it felt so nice that it can't even be described in words. And then she says that if she gave him freedom, it doesn't mean that he can move without her permission. It sounded so strange that he even wanted to stand, but he stopped himself in time. He didn't plan to apologize, so he just kept silent and began to wait for what she would say next. The hostess gave him the opportunity to splash out all his emotions, and then allowed him to ask her for something he had probably been dreaming about for a long time. But he had to do it in such a way that she would agree. Ray has no idea what she expects from him, how she can ask in a special way, because it's only a few words, but she somehow imagined it. There are no hints or prompts from her. You have to guess for yourself, and if we do something wrong, it is possible that she will even hit us for it. The guy asks him to let go indiscriminately with different words that he knows, hoping that at least one of them will satisfy her. He is already tired of this indifferent look. It looks straight into his soul and pierces him like an icy sword. If earlier he looked at her with hatred, now he understood that there is no point in being indignant, and if he tries to do this, it will be worse for him. While he has already asked more than 60 times to give him freedom, at least for a while, she stands in one place and does not react at all. He even used the words that he refused to say before. Please, I beg. Now he says all this without noticing it. And so that she wouldn't think that he could run away, he promised not to do it and asked what she had to get or see to start believing him. Now he is ready for everything, he said so. And immediately after these words, she became interested. The main thing is that later Ray does not regret what he himself agreed to. While he was looking at her with frightened and tired eyes, the girl did not miss the opportunity to remind him how he talked to her at the beginning and how he was now. She knew that he wouldn't be able to resist for long, just like everyone else, and she was very glad that he was ready to carry out any orders. And then she comes a little closer to him, starts to lift her leg, but why she did it was impossible to even imagine. She just goes and starts touching things with her dirty shoes that she shouldn't. But what's even more surprising is how it all ends. Yenna starts to move her dirty feet in that place. At first he didn't want it, but now you can see it on his face. He asks her to continue. It hurts him, but he wants her not to stop. It even sounds somehow too strange. Ray liked it so much that he started making different sounds, and she immediately asked him to make it louder. The guy started not just enjoying himself. He started ordering her to press harder, and for some reason didn't think about the fact that she might not like it. The girl had already asked him to remember how to talk to her, so as an exclamation lesson, she hit him in the face with all her might. It was another humiliating situation. What he liked most was that literally a second ago, he was enjoying himself, and now she was hitting him, and thus only ruined everything. The owner is an unpredictable person. First, she can do something good, then hit, and then ask to smile or something else. Yana reminded that only she can shout here, although she sees that the guy doesn't even listen to her. He doesn't have time for that now. He doesn't even look into her eyes. He closes them and tries to enjoy the remnants of pleasure that he hasn't experienced for a long time. She got bored. The owner went about her business. After some time, one of the assistants comes to him, opens the door with a key. Ray waited for a long time for one of them. He wanted to ask for something, but he was afraid that they might refuse him. He urgently needs to go to the toilet. At least that's what he told this assistant. Maybe this is an escape plan. For this purpose, he asked to remove the chains from him for a short time. Supposedly, he would not be able to do anything with them. The assistant, without thinking, takes the same key and frees Ray, suspecting nothing. The guy is too inattentive, and he may soon regret it. Ray can't wait. Every second felt like an hour, and most likely, in fact, he didn't need to go to the toilet. It was a trick to get out of this room. He had that same crazy look, the desire to defeat everyone in his path and return to normal life, so as never to humiliate himself in front of anyone again. He hit this guy with one hand, didn't even use all his strength, and he's already lying on the floor like he's been hit more than 10 times. He doesn't even move, apparently unconscious. And that's for the best. Now the guy can be free unless, of course, he meets someone else in the corridor. He took all these keys from him, already started to set him up. How he returns home and how he will take revenge on Yana. If everything works out, he will not destroy her. He will mock her the same way she mocked him. It's clear that the longer he stays here and thinks about his plan, the more likely it is that someone will come in here and stop him. He is no longer embarrassed by the fact that he has no clothes on, how he looks. He just sees the goal to get out of here. And for now, this is the only thing that interests him. There's still a little bit left, just a little bit. Ray is sure he's doing everything right, and this risk can be justified. The main thing is not to be afraid of anyone or anything, and to go to the end. It's clear that they will try to stop him. You need to be prepared for this. Although if you remember, he's already been through worse, and it doesn't cost him anything to deal with several dozen nights. The guy ran out of the corridor. It was unusual to look at the sunlight, and it so happened that at that very moment, Yana was walking towards him. At first glance, she looked very calm, but knowing this person, it doesn't mean anything. He was a little scared of her, was taken aback by the surprise, and then, out of habit, began to defend himself, knowing that she would not let him leave so easily and would not let him go anywhere. He saw that cold look, started to defend himself with his hands and feet, but she turned out to be very dexterous. Ray didn't expect this from her. The seemingly harmless girl turned out to be more dangerous and stronger than some of the knights he fought with. She copes with him quite well. She has very good reactions. She hit something, he already knew everything. She chose the right moment, grabbed him by the neck, and threw him to the floor, although even from the outside it looked too strange. He looks invincible, but is already under her complete control again. He couldn't even hit her once. The girl wants to know what just happened. He should confess everything while she has time to listen to him. She knew that sooner or later he would try to escape, so she often walked nearby so that she could suddenly react, as had just happened. Sometime later, then Yana choked him so hard that he lost consciousness, and now again in that room, they are trying to bring him back to consciousness. And for this, they pour ice water on him. This time they tied him up tighter. He was scared to even imagine what would happen next. And this terrible cold, it was already far from warm here, and now they were pouring ice water on him. Now he has finally come to his senses. He begins to shiver from the cold. But the mistress is already so angry that she doesn't care how he feels. She wants to show once and for all what happens when someone tries to deceive her. In fact, she doesn't even need to say anything. He already understands that there will be no more indulgences. Now he will cry, suffer, several times a day without exception. Everything he had experienced before was just a warm-up. Now everything would be as her imagination could imagine. She usually comes up with ideas as she goes along. So far, she's only come up with the idea of running an ice cube over his body and where it would be felt most sensitively. It's strange, but after yesterday's test, this seems like an easy warm-up. But this is just the beginning. There is still more to come. Yana found some kind of bell that needs to be attached to the ray, so that even if she is in her room, she will always know its exact location. And you won't have to go in as often to make sure he hasn't run away or is trying to do so. She had already pierced him where it was very painful, but he miraculously restrained himself and endured, although it was unbearable. She does it so calmly as if she were just combing his hair, feeding him, or giving him a massage. He himself would never have thought of such a thing. Ray thought that he was the most cruel person of all he knew, but he was very much mistaken. Despite how she looks and how she behaves, something terrible is going on in her head. Now it's clear why she has no friends, and even less so, no relationships. After all this, she still dares to say that such jewelry suits him very well, and if she finds something else, she will definitely add it to his body. It's impossible, but he holds on and hasn't even screamed once, although during the whole time there was nothing worse than this punishment. He is trying his best to make sure that she does not find out his weak points, otherwise he will use it for a very long time. And that's not all she came up with. From now on, as soon as these 2 bells ring, it will mean that it's time for punishment. And the point is that he doesn't move a millimeter. It seems that that bell rings even when it doesn't move at all. She sees it herself, but still asks to get used to the mechanism and make it so that there is complete silence in the room. The problem is that there are 2 of these bells, one on the right side, the other on the left. And in order for there to be no sound, you only need to lose consciousness or fall asleep. He has a feeling that she is just laughing at him, giving impossible orders, and then watching his reaction. After that, it usually also upsets you that he is behaving in some way, although in such conditions, it is impossible to do otherwise. He was lucky that the wounds from the bells no longer hurt. The pain went away faster than he expected, and that makes him very happy. It's not clear where she got this idea from, but it seems to her that he enjoys the fact that she touched his sensitive spots very often. After that, she started pulling those bells and advised him to stand on his toes if he didn't want something to come off. It was ticklish, painful, horrible, but she couldn't move away and continued to mock. Meanwhile, the warm-up came to an end. The hostess started something more interesting, but only for her personally. She installed a structure between his legs that is very sharp, where she could accidentally hit something with it. He can no longer stand up normally. He has to stand on his toes, and it is unknown when she will remove this terrible construction. Yana ordered it from her assistant yesterday and said that she hadn't tested anything like this yet, so she was very interested in checking how long it would last. As soon as you touch a sharp edge with some part of your body, a wound will immediately appear. Everything there is so sharpened. Ray had never blushed like that before. He himself didn't expect you to be able to withstand so much, and he's sure there were cases when guys just died. For so long, he hasn't eaten anything, hasn't drunk a single sip of water, and now he feels just awful. He's never had anything worse in his life. Yana made it so that he now has sharp objects everywhere. Now it's really dangerous to move, just like she warned. On top of all this, she also touches where he asked not to touch. From this, he gets shivers all over his body, and it is easy to get hurt. The girl asks if this is a request or not. The guy couldn't hold back and asked what she wants from him, what all this bullying is for, and why can't they find some kind of compromise. She's back at it again, asking to speak politely, as if he were a queen. But if she doesn't know, then usually kings are at least fair and not as cruel as she is. To call herself a queen, she's still very far from that. How he doesn't want to talk to this terrible girl like a queen, but her desire is above all else now. Somehow he got some courage and replied that she wouldn't expect anything like that from him. Even if he screamed in pain, he still wouldn't call her queen. In that case, there's nothing to be done. She'll continue to mock him until the guy realizes that this is no longer a joke. His future directly depends on how he treats her. And if he talks like that, he himself will have to pay for it later. In total, there are already more than 20 bells on it. She hung 10 of them, as if on some hooks on each side. And that's not all she has with her. She looked at him from behind for so long that she couldn't hold back and hit him right in the very place that she liked the most. She is a fan of such views, but this time she did not limit herself to admiration. She thought that he deserved pain and did it with all her might. Lucky she didn't have any other object in her hands. It was bearable, but still very unpleasant and humiliating. Then she came up to him from behind, touched those bells which already felt much heavier than they had originally, and asked if he wanted to take them off. Naturally, he said that he really wanted this and was ready to do anything, just so that she would take them off as soon as possible. After that, Yana seemed to forget that she had just asked him and began to touch something even lower, the place where the bells hang. This time her movements were very soft, gentle. He really liked it and wanted her to do it longer. She has very cold hands and he likes it. Ray relaxed and for the first time in a long time, got pleasure. As it usually happens, her gentleness does not mean that everything will end well. It could be a distraction before she makes him feel bad. When he asked her to touch him a little more roughly, she immediately pulled the bell, hurt him and reminded him that here she decides how and what to do. And if he orders her, he will regret it very much. Yana hates it most of all when someone commands her or tries to do so. Words cannot describe how tired he is of these bells. She does not leave them alone and continues to mock them every couple of minutes. The guy started using the words please, beg, implore again, making her a little kinder, but not much. The girl is very happy that he is starting to learn from his mistakes, although others understood this much faster. When suddenly she again lowered her hands a little lower on his body and began to touch, not as gently as then. It was rude, unpleasant, somewhat cruel, and just awful. Nothing surprising, it's just her style. Yana is squeezing so much that I want to yell at her and at least hit her hard so that she understands that this is too much. He starts to cry. It becomes very hot, painful, but at the same time incredibly pleasant, no matter how it sounds. He began to beg her not to stop. He wants to go to the end in this regard and get pleasure, but everything can't be so perfect. At that moment, when there were literally a couple of seconds left, the girl takes her hand away, leaving him in terrible agony. He wants to finish it, but his hands are tied and she won't do it anymore. This is the very punishment for the fact that he asked her to do something. She says that if he can't have fun, that's his problem, and she's not going to help him with that. He's literally going crazy now. He wants her to finish everything. It will take literally a minute, which will free him from this torment. He doesn't want to grovel before this girl, but there is only one way to be with her. Otherwise, she is very cruel. At such moments, Ray begins to think about what is better, to leave this life or to continue to suffer and make this person happy with his tears. She has no pity when he is shaking, crying, shaking, and can get seriously hurt at any moment. For her, it is just a joke and a funny show. It's impossible to imagine what would have to happen for her to feel sorry for someone. She herself would probably go crazy if she got hurt even a little. The owner promised that she would come to him once a day, but this is already the second time. He definitely won't be able to stand a third. The guy has no strength to think about anything. He even ignores half of the unpleasant feelings. He doesn't care so much what she will do with him. He feels dizzy, he wants to drink, he wants to eat, he wants to stand up normally and stop holding onto his hands in order to survive. Probably since no one has ever suffered so much on the first day of being here. She has a special attitude towards him, and this only makes things worse for him. Ray's body is already itching from his own tears. He is already confused in his feelings. If she allows him to sit calmly on the chair, it will be, without exaggeration, the best gift he has received in his entire life. He will enjoy this moment as never before. Maybe all this bullying even brought benefits. Now he appreciates what he never paid attention to before. Finally, a miracle happened, which he had not even dreamed of and had forgotten what she had promised. Yana reached for these weights for the bells and still took them off, but left the bells themselves. At that moment, he relaxed so much as if he knew that she was already letting him go. It was an incredible pleasure. But instead of relaxing and just keeping quiet, he did the opposite. Got really angry and asked, what did he do to deserve this treatment? And why is she treating him like this? She could have just locked him in a dungeon and done nothing. It is very important not to overdo it now. Otherwise, those weights will end up on him again. She is always responsible for her words and will not tolerate such behavior. I wonder what she'll say about this. Yana was most likely going to leave, but he detained her, and if she regrets it, it will be her own fault. She pretended to be thinking about something, didn't even look in his direction, but it was only so that he would understand that he said something wrong. After that, she asked him why he was so angry. She eased his pain and thought to hear something else. The hostess advised him to pray that this night would pass peacefully and that she would not return to him again with new trials. She comes up with them so easily and quickly that she can easily arrange a restless night for him. It all depends only on his behavior. At some point, Ray begins to realize why he was sent to this particular girl, because it is energy-consuming to torture someone out of hatred. But the one who uses anger without emotion does not get tired, and she is just such a person. It turns out that he is just an empty space for her. The guy realized that this could go on forever, even if he remains silent and stops moving. Nothing will change. And then he did something that even the villain didn't expect from him. She thought that he would just cry from hopelessness. But Ray hurt himself, and in such a way that even she herself would not have thought of it. She had never seen anything like it before. He bit his tongue so hard that it was as if half of it was already gone. At least he also closed his eyes and deliberately showed that he didn't care about anything anymore. She started calling him different names. From the outside, it looked terrible, even worse than everything she had done to him before. On the one hand, it was impossible to look at it, but on the other, she wanted to check what was left of him after such a bite. Her favorite jokes began, how his own language could interfere with him, although it is obvious that he did it for a completely different reason. She has no words, only emotions, and a complete lack of understanding of what the point is. Now he will have to suffer from what he did to himself, and she has nothing to do with it. She asked if Ray really thought that this would make her feel sorry for him, but it seems that it will work just the opposite. This had never happened before, but seeing how he gave in, she wanted to kiss him and did it without warning. She immediately noticed that he didn't know how to do this, and assumed that he had never had relationships or at least any interactions with girls. Although it is unclear why she is interested in this at all, she was indignant, as if these skills could soon be useful to him. Ray replied that it was very simple. He just didn't want to do it with her and didn't understand whether she really expected him to give in and try to do something in return. For him, it even sounded funny. After that, she asked what was wrong with him. Although everything was clear here, after everything that happened between them, he couldn't have feelings for her and at least some desire to kiss. At some point, he himself did not notice it, but he begins to like everything. He takes the initiative, and after she tormented him literally a few minutes ago, now nothing bothers him. At the same time the girl touches where she touched before, she is very gentle and he does not resist. It's a very strange situation. At first he hates her, and now he enjoys kissing a person who shouldn't have anything like that. Meanwhile, she stopped doing it, and even though he just liked everything, he was crazy about this kiss. For her, he pretended as if it was terrible, and if there was a chance, he would immediately push her away. He called her disgusting, made a corresponding expression on his face, and at that moment he thinks about just continuing. When he saw those eyes in front of him, he stopped controlling himself, trusted his instincts, but most likely he will regret it later. Everything is too confusing. He himself does not know what just happened. He wants to tear her apart, but at the same time, this desire is constantly changing and disappearing. The next day came. Early in the morning, Yana went to the Empress. Today they have a meeting planned, probably about how things are going with Ray. I wonder if the villain will tell everything as it really was or say that she hardly visited him. Her Majesty, as usual, drinks her favorite tea. For her, it is a whole ceremony and she never misses it, even if she is in a hurry somewhere. The Empress asked how she was doing, to which the girl replied that she was not doing very well, and all because of her annoying gift. Her Majesty knew it would not be easy with him, although she does not even suspect that everything is far from what General Yana tells her. Apparently, the girl very often pretends to be someone other than who she really is, and people have no idea what she is like when she is alone with her servants. Surprisingly, she said that she couldn't even harm him, that she wanted to cut off at least something of him, but the Empress had ordered it and she couldn't do anything about it. She is used to being much tougher, but with him she has to think and not forget that he must stay alive. The Empress does not understand what is being discussed. She took it as if her order was too difficult. Although she only asked to leave him alive, Yana replied that this is not the issue. Her Majesty didn't even listen any further. She decided to find out what about food. They hadn't discussed this issue before, but she hoped that everything was fine with them. Yana didn't hide anything. She said that she didn't think that it was necessary to feed him, as if she didn't understand that it was too much. He was a person, just like her. It's strange that Hanami didn't get indignant. She thought that it was her own fault because she already knew that Yana was very restrictive of her servants in this regard. I had to promise that the guy wouldn't die of hunger, but at the same time, she definitely doesn't promise normal food. And then the Empress admits that in fact, she could have ordered someone to destroy him, but she would never forgive herself for this. She couldn't even ask Yana about it, because it would still have been her order. She would be satisfied with Ray's death only if it didn't happen on her initiative. Just in case, she didn't say anything about it. Knowing Yana, using this information, she can get rid of him even today. Moreover, this will also be considered as a hint from her side. Hasol, a union of tribes, to ascend to the throne, one must gain the support of the majority of tribes. But the tribes fear that the ruler will have children who will inherit the throne, so the Empress was forced to accept celibacy. Now that she has received her throne and is not going to change traditions, she is forced to make sure that he stays alive no matter what. Even though her plans are a little out of sync with reality, she tries to believe that under Yana's care, Ray will feel okay, even though it sounds like something impossible. Meanwhile, Hanami returned to the main point and said that she had not called her for this at all, but for a completely different reason. The Empress is going to go to the imperial capital soon because they have made an official offer of a truce. The situation has become very complicated. It is necessary to bring in troops and show who is in charge. Yana thought about it a little. At first, she didn't understand how to arrange all this, but then she thought that nothing was impossible for them. But it seems to her that since the unification of the men's division is inevitable, visiting the Empire now would be a waste of time. According to her assumptions, it could take at least 6 months, or maybe more. So she was forced to ask the question whether Hanami was sure that she wanted to go there, because surely this issue could be resolved somehow differently. The Empress doesn't quite understand what's going on here, because as we know, if you want to defeat a tiger, you don't need to be afraid of its lair. Yana, in this case, wants to know only one thing. Will she have to go with her? And of course, the exact date, so that she can resolve all her important matters before that moment and be free? Hanami was surprised that the girl even asked her this question, because it was obvious, of course, that she would like to go there with her. How can she go about her business without her best assistant, who no knight can replace? Meanwhile, returning to her place, the first thing the hostess asks is if Ray has eaten today, which means she listened after all and won't leave him hungry. Everything would have been fine if she hadn't ordered the rice to be boiled so much that it would be a mixture that you wouldn't even have to chew, and also asked to add one ingredient to it. The assistant immediately clarified what it was, because he should understand what he adds to the food he prepares. At first, she didn't want to tell him anything, but then she thought, what difference does it make? He'll do whatever she tells him anyway. Then she explained that this was a medicine, or rather, a means that would make him eat normally. It is possible that she wanted to calm the assistant down, and in fact, this is a completely different means. After that, she ran to him very quickly, so quickly as if she missed him, although she would never admit it to herself. You can see how hungry he is, that he has no strength. Sweat is pouring off him as usual. The guy is not in the best condition, but he is still holding up well. The girl tried to pretend as if she was in no hurry to get to him, although nothing worked. She was breathing so fast and hard that nothing could be hidden. Some time passed. The assistants brought food. She had already inserted a special object into him, with the help of which it would be easy to feed even the food that he does not want to eat. The girl asks if he is hungry or not, as if she thinks that he will say that he is not at all, although she herself knows that the whole time he has been here, he has not eaten a single crumb of bread. The guy got really angry because he doesn't want to eat any food from her. There's a high probability that it could be poisoned, and he doesn't need that. She said that she mixed all the necessary ingredients, even asked to pour a full portion, but it looks completely unappetizing, even a little disgusting. The rice is so overcooked that it's impossible to look at it. It's some kind of jelly that even smells bad. It seems to him that it is better to remain hungry than to eat a whole portion of this dish, which is not worth feeding even to those who are not picky. They are so appetizing that the assistant, when he was alone with this portion, tried not to look at the plate at all. Yana didn't get out of bed, that she added some ingredient, thanks to which the bowl will be empty after some time, and maybe he will even ask for more, which of course, she will not give him. This ingredient is used to break the spirit of disobedient servants who manage to resist and refuse food. This man looks at everything that is happening and does not understand where the guy gets so much patience and endurance from. Although he has only been here for a couple of days, it's not clear yet how tasty it is, but it looks simply disgusting in any case. He will have to finish it all, and the more he resists, the longer she will have to feed him. Here he has to choose for himself, eat everything at once and quickly, or take a risk, spoil her mood, and this usually does not end well. It all tasted so awful that Ray started crying again and refused to swallow the horrible rice. Not only was this rice in ruins, but there was not a drop of salt or other spices in it, although he expected nothing else from her. It would seem like ordinary rice. A little crumbled, without salt, it should be more or less edible, but the man cries and refuses to swallow it whole. Apparently, it's so disgusting that it's impossible to even try to do it. Now he even risks getting punished. Probably it's all because of that very ingredient. Maybe it ruined the taste and it was done on purpose. Just think, they literally didn't kiss yesterday, and now she's feeding him inedible food, which is even more humiliating. She tells him so. If you don't eat this, you'll be without food for the next few days at least. So you better eat now and don't make me angry. Surprisingly, now he wants to run away from here much more than ever before. This rice is so terrible. She knows how to turn a person's life into a real hell, and it turns out that to do this, you just need to cook some tasteless food. He even became interested to see what she had for breakfast today, what she would have for lunch and dinner. Probably everything was very different from what he ate. The guy has eaten a lot of bad tasting things in his life, even things that looked worse, but they were tastier than this horror that she was offering him. In the end, he somehow ate the whole portion. It was quite a torture, and probably some punishments were easier than this. I don't even want to imagine what she'll bring him next time. Although most likely that's all the food for today, there won't be anything else. Her main goal is simply not to leave him hungry so that he does not die of hunger, and this will be more than enough. It would be wonderful if she left here right now and for a very long time so that we could be alone and rest a little. But she is in no hurry. She acts as if something new is about to happen, something she has been thinking about all night. Even the assistant noticed that the mistress came to him much more often than to the others, although she also did not leave the other servants without attention. Apparently, he interested her more, or maybe she was just tired of the others, and very soon she will get tired of Ray, which he has probably been dreaming about for a long time. Naturally, this time she didn't leave him. She started touching him everywhere she could to create those very emotional swings that he loves so much. But really, she very often first makes fun of him, then does something nice to him, and so on in a circle. Immediately after this, knowing that he has eaten his fill, he begins to touch his stomach and presses on it with all his might. It hurts so much that he starts crying again. He starts gritting his teeth and begs her not to do it again. He starts to blurt out some not very pleasant words towards her, and now he will have to answer for it. She grabs him by the hair, pulls it, and asks if she really heard him say something ugly about her. The girl is already tired of repeating that it won't work with her. He needs to be very kind, affectionate, and tolerate everything that she does to him. He had to apologize, but what he definitely didn't expect was that she finally freed his legs, and it was very nice. They squeezed him for a very long time, then she released his hands, which was a real surprise. Ray doesn't expect this to last very long. He enjoys every second, but at the same time, her calmness is really stressing him out. Besides, usually when she does something nice to him or doesn't say anything, something terrible happens right after that, and the quieter and nicer she behaves, the more painful it is for him in the end. And then the guy decided to use his new tactic, which he thought about last night. He couldn't sleep, so he decided that it wouldn't hurt to find a special approach to her. She is still a person too, and can't be completely ruthless and cold as she tries to seem. He starts saying that she is very beautiful today, that he is grateful to her for a good night, and of course, for paying so much attention to him. He wouldn't want to tell her half of this at all, but it's necessary for the cause. You never know, maybe he'll be able to make her at least a little more tender. Although in reality this is not so, but he began to confess as if he was beginning to have some feelings for her. He said that when she is near, it hurts him, but as soon as she leaves, he wants her to come back, even if she mocks him. Supposedly for her sake, he is ready to endure any pain. If only she would stay here and not leave him for too long. He almost laughed a few times when he said this phrase, but still he learned it, and it seemed to sound very plausible. Yana didn't say anything to this. She silently hit him in the face, apparently wanting to hint that she wasn't going to believe anything like that. Ray realized that he had gone a bit too far because he himself would not have believed these words in her place and regretted that he had tried to deceive her at all. She's still not as naive as he would like. Probably other guys, of whom she has few, have already tried to appease her in this way. It's a pity that everything turned out this way. Now we just have to hope that it doesn't turn into another punishment. Just in case, he began to act as if all these words were true, began to address her with tenderness, adhering to this image. Ray thought that if nothing worked, he would definitely come up with something else, because it was better than doing nothing and waiting for a miracle, which under her control had long since ceased to exist. It's strange today the girl is more or less calm. She apparently decided to spare him, considering what he experienced yesterday twice with a frequency of several hours. Or maybe she was just thinking about what she had agreed on with the Empress. And I don't have time for it right now. And then something starts to happen that he was clearly not prepared for. She gently puts her hands on him and starts to go down. Then she strokes him everywhere she can, which means it could be some kind of trap to make him relax, and she will immediately hurt him. The guy got really tense. He doesn't understand what to expect next. What all this means, and in general, why is she suddenly so affectionate? Every day she opens up to him from different sides, but the fact that each time he suffers less and less makes him very happy. It seems that on the first day, she just wanted to show him who he was dealing with and what he should be afraid of. Even now, she looks too tired. Even her gaze says that she has no strength or desire to do anything with him. At some point, the guy wasn't even afraid. He asked what was the matter, why she didn't look like herself today, even though it was risky, but he told her so. Yana didn't hit him in the face. She didn't scream. She didn't do anything at all. She just kept quiet, and that was it. On the one hand, he really likes this behavior, but on the other hand, all this only makes him more and more alarmed. Literally a few minutes passed. She asked him to hurt himself, and since he had already managed to rest, he obeyed and began to squeeze himself in very sensitive places where the bells had been hanging all this time. Again, since she doesn't control how hard he presses, the guy only pretended that it was very painful so that she wouldn't do it herself and she would be satisfied with it. Then she took his two hands, raised them up, and began to stare intently. But in those eyes, he did not see a drop of hatred. Then she let go of one hand and started holding only the other one in the air. It looked even stranger than everything that had happened before. It may seem that she is only pretending to do something with him, but her thoughts are completely different. As if she only needed to see that he was suffering. And today it was enough to just pretend that this was the case. Yana tries very hard to grab his hair, but she barely touches it, and perhaps this day can safely be called a rest. He already thought that he would have to suffer like yesterday, but he was very lucky, and he himself realizes this very slowly because he knows that everything can change at any moment. It is possible that she is behaving this way on purpose so that she can suddenly change and start making fun of him. He has to squeeze out tears on purpose so that she doesn't notice that she feels too sorry for him and allows him to relax. Finally, before leaving, she still hit him a few times out of habit, but it still didn't compare to the force with which she did it before. This time she did it 10 times, and each time she did it, she asked him to say it in order and also as if he liked it. It's very easy, the guy did as she asked, and again pretended as if he couldn't stand it anymore. And then something began that he no longer expected. She entered into the role and again began to demand more and more from him. She wanted him to cry from pain, for his whole body to sweat again, and for him to have that slight tremor that always made her crazy. Everything turned out just as the guy thought. Apparently, the girl just came to her senses. She took full advantage of this meeting. Apparently, only after such torment from him does she gain energy. In any case, it's good that she wasn't like this right away. Ray managed to rest. He is still grateful to her, and now he is ready to suffer because it will still be less than it could have been. At some point, it became difficult for him to breathe. She strains him so much that he has to keep his whole body in good shape. It seems like at the beginning, she was deliberately pretending that she didn't care about him. Now the guy will forever remember that even if she tries to leave, it still doesn't mean anything good. He saw that look again. Now it was not so absent-minded, more focused, accordingly. She was not going to go anywhere anymore. Ray knows the longer she tortures him, the more time it takes for her to enjoy the process. Especially since after a long pause, she definitely won't feel sorry for him, and one can only guess how it will all end. He already understands that he will have to pay for a quiet half-day, so he begs her to spare him at least today, and only then he is ready for anything that her imagination can come up with. Yana pushed him aside, took off her shoes, and if you remember the previous situation, then she did this in order to touch his body with her foot, or rather a very sensitive area. Ray was incredibly happy, but he tried not to show it. He relaxed and began to enjoy her cool foot. This is exactly what he was missing right now. Sometimes he sincerely understands why he deserved such surprises from her, and he also sees that she herself thinks about it very often. It's unlikely that a girl would do something like that. She has to touch it with her foot, and if it was disgusting, she would do it with some other object. And so her movements are very smooth, soft, gentle, which brings incredible pleasure to each of them. He liked it so much that he took her leg, started to give her a light massage. At least there, he could help her relax and not be rude to him. Now Ray thinks that if he had the chance, he would keep her leg and use it at least every day. He could never do something like that on his own, no matter how hard he tried. She does some miracles with her foot. At the same time, they look at him as if nothing is happening. The only thing left to fear is that after good emotions, she will want to see bad ones. It's her style to first make someone feel good, then start hitting or hurting in some other way. After this, Ray can't really open his eyes. He's relaxed, resting, and the worst thing she can do now is to do something that can make him tense. She had an idea. Not the most cruel, but still a little disgusting. All that was left on her leg after she made him feel good. Now he must clean it up, but not with his hands or anything else, but with his mouth and in such a way that not a single drop remains. Not the most pleasant task. He even threw up a little from the smell and taste. But orders are orders, and if he doesn't do it, he'll have to do something worse. She also demanded that he do it as if he was eating some delicious ice cream or any other dessert that he was crazy about. Yana, is it true that he understands her and does everything perfectly as she imagined? And if you remember, on the first day he refused to eat even normal rice porridge, and now he is already doing something like this. Ray doesn't even know what was better, her last mission or the one that hurt him. He tried for the first time in his life what some girls try almost every day. He is genuinely surprised. He can't imagine how someone could like it, and he only did it because he had no choice. The next day has already arrived. Today the mistress has been with him since the morning. She came much earlier than he woke up, and the guy is no longer surprised. He reacted calmly and even said hello. Today she gave him a small gift, gave him clothes to cover himself with, although this is no longer necessary, because what hasn't she seen? Given yesterday's situation, today he expects something cruel, terrible, vile, and unpleasant from her. Yana used to wear almost no makeup, but today she put on a little makeup and even some jewelry. It's strange. Why would that be? Ray didn't notice it before, but there is already food on the table. 3 dishes, and he can eat it all in one go. This time, breakfast looks much more attractive than last time. She said that today everything should taste better than usual. She didn't ask to spoil the food, but she didn't say what it was connected with. Ray thought it was a scam. She probably asked to make everything beautiful, but everything could taste terrible and inedible. He took the first spoon with apprehension. Today the rice is crumbly and even grains are visible. This is very pleasing. The guy never thought that he would be happy with such trifles as normally cooked porridge. He tried the first spoon. It was very tasty. There was salt in it, but would he have to pay for it somehow, for example, with his pain? This breakfast was incredible. Everything was so delicious. She even asked the chef to cook fish, which was also great. Now he is in the mood for several days ahead. He took all this as some kind of gift, although this is an ordinary breakfast, which should be something ordinary. There is a suspicion that since there is so much crockery here, it may be the subject of the next test, which is not excluded. He asks in advance what she has prepared for today. After all, he wants to know everything right away so that there are no unpleasant surprises. Naturally, she didn't tell him anything like that. It wouldn't be interesting for her because she really likes to look at his surprised face, which doesn't know what awaits him next. And then something interesting started. She made a little provocation. said that if he managed to escape from her now, she would never catch up with him again and try to bring him back. At that very second, Ray listened to her, even threw the table away and started to run away. But the girl caught him from the first seconds. She blocked the passage and said that it was a test that he failed, but everything was so simple. He tried to resist a little, wanted to get her out of the way, even used cutlery, but forgot that it doesn't work on her. Yana dealt with him very easily, threw him to the floor and hinted that he would have to suffer a lot for this. It's amazing how he didn't realize that there could be a lot of such checks. Every day, one can only hope that next time he won't be so naive. And before doing anything, he will try to think, because whenever he believed her and gave in to such manipulations, it never ended well, just like now. All the good things she says or suggests should be passed over and simply ignored. She started to twist his arm, started to throw the remains of food at him, but it seems that this is only the beginning before the main test. The guy remembered that the colder her gaze, the worse she would treat him. It was always like that, without exception. At that moment, she pretended to want to take care of him a little and offered to finish his breakfast, because supposedly the next meal was in question for him, and he would have to eat from the floor, that very handful of rice that was near his face. The girl warned that if he remained silent for even a few more seconds, she would feed him herself, and most likely, the next meal would be as disgusting as the previous one. She can easily arrange it, so it was easier to agree and do as she says. That's it. It was much tastier than that overcooked porridge that he had been eating for several hours that time. And then he thought that if there was a risk that next time he wouldn't eat properly, he asked to give him a little freedom and finish the rest of the fish and soup that was lying nearby. And she laughed at this and said that now he deserves only such a meal, to eat half and nothing more. Then she went about her business, and half an hour later she returned, but not alone, but with other girls, of whom there were many. Before telling him what was going on, she asked him to get into a certain position that he hated the most. It was terribly uncomfortable, embarrassing, especially since there were such beautiful girls nearby who probably knew him well. It was a terrible disgrace. It would have been better if she had not brought them and mocked him as soon as she wanted. Right after he took the appropriate position, Yana told him that all these girls came to help him. They will, so to speak, help with the bathing procedures. And all this happened before she dressed him in some clothes and let him out into the street, but under strict control. There is a suspicion that she will take him along on a trip with the Empress. And before they arrive somewhere, she gave him some rules, for example, to call her his mistress and to obey her in everything. And if everything goes perfectly, she will. So be it. Save him from the evening torment, and the evening will pass for him calmly, alone with himself, and until the morning he will be able to do whatever he wants. And also, if she is very pleased with him, she even promised to cook dinner. Or rather, her assistants will cook it. Not bad motivation. All that's left is to believe that everything will be like this. Maybe these are just empty promises, and if he reminds that they agreed on something, it will only get worse for him. Ray has no choice but to remain silent and act only when the mistress orders it. It is not yet clear where they are going, who they are waiting for, what will happen next, and most importantly, how it will all end. There is another point that she remembered only now. Yana advises him to pretend that she has never heard him and that he is not afraid to be with her so that no one would think that this is true. It turns out that today she has a small meeting. There will be some familiar girls, and it is strange that only Yana came with an assistant. As soon as she came closer, she was immediately noticed, and instead of asking how she was doing, everyone became interested in Ray. Perhaps this is what the lady was trying to achieve. Apparently, the girl just knows that he is a very handsome guy and came specifically to brag to arouse envy and more. At some point, there was an awkward pause between them. All the girls' eyes were directed in his direction, and of course, he noticed it. And the most interesting thing is that they all must be the same as Yana. They all also have servants whom they mock, but some admitted that no one had such a handsome man as Ray. Everyone was wondering where I found him, how she copes with him, because the guy looks like he won't let anyone bully him. Naturally, they all started talking to him very nicely, started hinting that he might move on to one of them. Although it is clear that Yana would never allow this. She understands that bringing him here was very risky, but she wanted to brag more, so it turned out the way it did. It's clear that she's a little nervous, although it's very strange. Why would that be, really? A guy can very easily leave her if he wants and go to one of the other girls. He doesn't know anything about it yet, obviously. Even if he had such an opportunity, she still wouldn't tell him about it. Therefore, he listens carefully to every word of these girls. Suddenly, they will say something useful, although it is unknown whether they are better than Yana, and which of them is the cruelest. It is impossible to understand anything from the behavior, because even Yana tries to look better than she really is, and most likely, every woman behaves like that. And then something began that he had not been warned about. It became clear to him that the lady had given her consent to this in advance, but had not told him anything about it. They began to escort him to the table, took off his clothes and forced him to take the very position that he hated the most. There were so many people around that he felt very ashamed and unpleasant. He began to hate the hostess again because he did not understand how she could do this to him. The other girls are only happy to see him like this. They started to smile and rejoice, although he is not in the mood for laughing now. The worst thing is that this is just the beginning. It is not yet clear what they have come up with for him because they probably discussed it in advance and he does not even want to think about it. As it may sound, they started pouring cold liquid into some parts of him, and judging by the fact that no one is touching his face, the liquid is pouring into places where it shouldn't. This is real torture. He doesn't even want to look at these people's looks. They are crazy and real tyrants. Their smiles have become so disgusting that he no longer looks at them as girls, but as villains who know no bounds in anything. They also say that they really like this kind of entertainment. He wanted to get up from the table and hit each one in turn, but unfortunately, there are too many people around who can stop him. This is just some kind of mockery. There is nothing pleasant about it. Everything that Yana did to him earlier, it was not as terrible as all this. Sometimes it is better for him to endure pain than to humiliate himself in this way, especially in front of unfamiliar girls who get pleasure from it. While others are smiling, for some reason his mistress remains silent and does not react in any way. Although she is always like this, and this is not surprising. It's unlikely that she regretted bringing him to them. She herself did worse things, and there's nothing wrong with that for her. At such moments, Ray fights the desire to destroy everything around him, but he is stopped by the thought that at least one of them somehow managed to stop him last time and turned out to be stronger. It's very offensive for him to think about it, but that's the truth, and he doesn't know the others yet. Maybe there are those among them who really shouldn't be angered. How terrible it is that when he makes some sounds and doesn't know where to go from shame and more, it only amuses them. It's hard to even call these people people. They themselves are the real ones, these wounds, and they probably understand it themselves. But these are just a couple of days without freedom, which feel as if much more has passed. For example, as if several years have passed. He had never experienced anything worse in his life, and when they started to come closer to take a closer look at him, it was simply indescribable. How tired he was of the basic desire to get dressed, punish them and go free? It sounds so easy, but the guy was convinced that it only seems that way. In reality, everything is much more complicated. One of them even started talking to him. It is clear that she will not tolerate any discontent, and now he has to pretend as if nothing is happening and nothing is stopping him from not talking. She also starts to hurt him while demanding an answer to her questions and giving him only a couple of seconds to answer. When he couldn't stand it anymore, he asked to stop everything and give him at least a couple of minutes to rest. After that, silence appeared, which he fears most of all. Does no one understand how horrible the things they do are? That normal people don't do that. And in general, just like I'm tired of making fun of someone, they do it day after day without any exceptions. People don't even pay as much attention to work and hobbies as they do to these ridicule and trials. At some point, he just got tired, and since no one asked him to do anything, he just lay down on the table, took the opportunity and rested for a couple of seconds. He needed to catch his breath because it was unclear what else they would come up with and how long it would all last. And in the meantime, one of them liked him so much that she couldn't resist, lifted her dress and asked him to make her feel good. He has never heard anything like this. He can't imagine how she imagines it. And is it really possible that Yana will stand aside and calmly watch this? All hope is only on her. He even looked in her direction, and with his gaze made it clear that this was too much, and she urgently needed to intervene. Now everything depends only on her. He just closed his eyes and began to wait for a miracle. Although lately he does not believe that such things happen. Suddenly Yana comes up to the table, turns to that same girl and says that she will not allow this, and at the very least, they did not agree on anything like that. She forbade her to even think about the fact that her servant would do such a thing, and if he did, then only in relation to her. Ray didn't expect such help from her. She's not so ruthless after all. It was very nice for him. That girl asked what the problem was, why she felt sorry for her servant, to which Yana replied that it was none of her business, and she would only allow him to do what they had agreed on, and nothing more. It is clear that some kind of conflict is emerging. They have disagreed, and it is probably better not to interfere in this. Most likely, the party will end very quickly. This girl is very unhappy that she is being forbidden to do something. She is one of those people who are not used to being refused and does not tolerate such things. She is unlikely to last long here, and it will not be surprising if in 10 minutes everyone has already left. Yana is already looking at her as if from this day on, they will stop communicating forever and will never see each other again. The girl is not one of those people who show such impudence. She never allows people to do something that she does not agree with and does not know how to compromise. In the end, she simply took the guy by the arm, wished everyone a good day, and went about her business, thereby showing that the last word should always be and will be hers. Meanwhile, that girl only pretends that she doesn't care about this situation, although inside she feels very bad. She is also a very powerful person. She doesn't like refusals, and what's more, she is angry that all this happened in the presence of her friends. She doesn't even hide now that if it were up to her, she would do something similar to him, and she wanted it to last the whole day. I wonder what she will do about it. Will she try to get her way, or will she take out all her anger on her servants, who are also having a hard time? Even her friends became interested in what her plan was. They remember that usually such situations did not end quietly. She always got her way, although this time everything could be different. When Yana was leaving, she even said a few nice words to her, so that everyone could see that this situation didn't bother her at all. But everyone understands that this is just a cover, and that most likely the girl will not stop there. She is too stubborn, and in the near future, I will have to more often monitor that such a friend does not suddenly come to visit. This is the only thing she needed. This is the very person with whom it is dangerous to quarrel. Although Yana is not one of the timid ones, she does not need extra problems. She is the kind of person who can always defend herself, and she is not afraid of anyone's insults or anything like that. She has reached such a level that she doesn't care what they think of her. The main thing is that she didn't allow others to do something that she didn't like. She defended her boundaries, and not only hers. It turns out that this time they returned not to the dungeon, but to a new and very beautiful place, which even she rarely visited. But that's not all. They came here just like that. Yena was inspired by her friend's idea and thought, why not use her servant in such a way as to get pleasure? She thought that probably her other friends had been doing this for a long time, but she hadn't even thought about it. Ray doesn't even know what she's up to, but as soon as the girl takes off her clothes, he has an idea of how this is possible because she's never been interested in this before. She started asking him to compliment her, comment on every part of her body, admire her, and tell him what he liked most about her. He has never seen her like this and doesn't even know how to react to it. In any other situation, of course, he would only be happy. But knowing her, everything may not turn out as he thinks. It could also be that she took everything off on purpose to arouse some desire in him, and then she would get dressed and start punishing him for daring to look at her body. Suddenly, she decided to wash his body from all the touches of strangers, and of course, to cleanse everything that they poured inside him, no matter how it sounds. The girl herself understands that this is not the most pleasant activity, but it is not yet clear how necessary it was for her to take off her clothes. The guy can't even talk normally. He's constantly distracted and can't stop. He even feels uncomfortable thinking about the fact that he admires the body of a girl he hates, but at the same time, he can't do anything about it. Then she sent him into the shower, and she herself began to wait by the pool and still did not intend to get dressed. Yena sees how hard it is for him to walk, how tired he is of all this, but she does nothing about it, as if this is how it should be. She wondered how she could use it to make everyone happy, because she was already tired of being bullied and being like those with whom she often communicated before. Before, the lady was stylishly mistaken when she thought that it brings her pleasure. Recently, as soon as Ray appeared in her life, everything somehow became different. She doesn't want to be cruel to him, which is probably why she mocks him less and less. But at the same time, she doesn't stop doing it completely, as if she wants to keep him in rhythm and doesn't allow him to relax. Meanwhile, she asked him to stay in another room for a while, apparently thinking very seriously about something, and he was only happy about it. He immediately had thoughts about what could have happened if the lady had not helped him and ordered her friend to stop. He has already lost even the understanding and distinction of what is normal and what is not. He has experienced so much that he has already forgotten what is too much and what is in the order of things. For all the time he was bullied, he stopped being as sensitive as he used to be, although I can't say that this is good. It's strange, but he tries to think about it. But on the other hand, he can no longer think about anything else. The same thing happens in his life. Everything is too monotonous. Therefore, the same thoughts haunt him. Even when he sleeps at night, sometimes he forgets where reality is and where sleep is. He already dreams of the bullying that he experiences during the day, and unfortunately, he experiences the same thing at night. He hadn't had pure thoughts for a long time. Ray forgot the last time he didn't think about anything and just felt calm. For him, it already seems like some kind of luxury, but unfortunately, this is reality, and in the meantime, the lady called him back and with a grin told him to take his favorite pose. And he still didn't understand why she undressed. What was the point? It looked more like a provocation or something like that. It's very beautiful around. The water in the pool is warm, the air in the room is pleasant and humid. But if it weren't for one thing, everything would be perfect. At this point, she decided to clean the place where some liquid had recently been poured without her consent. It was another humiliating incident. Time lasted for a very long time. He turned red, wanted to ask her to stop, but endured. It's surprising that she did this for him at all, although before she would have left everything as it was, so that he would suffer, but now everything is different. Moreover, she began to massage his head, and with such light movements as if she was doing it for herself or for her loved one. She has clearly changed in relation to him. It is very noticeable, and no matter how she tries to hide it, she will not succeed. All this time, how long they have been together, he now her felt very calm, but at the same time he is afraid that it could end quickly. This has never happened before. Yana starts giving him her hand and asks what it smells like and if he likes the smell. He doesn't even know how to react to this. Naturally, even if he didn't like something, he would still answer that she smells nice, although that's how it was. She smells like some delicate flowers. It is a very pleasant smell of spring and everything that is associated with lightness and tenderness. Then she started stroking him again, where she hadn't stroked for a long time. The guy had already gotten out of the habit of such sensations, but he really liked it. It's a very awkward moment. Usually it's done mutually, but he's even afraid not to touch. You never know how she'll react to it. He even had a slight smile. This day can be considered half a rest, although it is not evening yet, and it is unknown how it will all end. The only thing he doesn't like is that she doesn't react to anything. She has an absolutely cold look, from which it is impossible to understand anything. She looks like she is being forced to do it, although it is exactly the opposite. It is completely her initiative. Then she got up and started walking somewhere, and didn't even cover herself from any side. Apparently, she completely accepts her body and isn't embarrassed at all. The girl is still thinking about what to do next. She still changed her mind about implementing something new. Decided to think about it later, especially since she was not in the mood for it today. Ray still didn't understand whether he should stay here or go somewhere. Who would monitor this and what was going on? The lady hasn't been herself lately. Before she at least said something, but now she mostly just keeps quiet. He decided that it would probably be better to follow her, because if he stayed here, it could be a mistake. He is very annoyed by all these people who gossip behind his back and do it because they know that nothing will happen to them for it. It turns out that they were nearby all this time. Those girls didn't go anywhere. They stayed for tea, and when Yana went outside, they even said goodbye to her and didn't ignore her. Especially that friend who is most interested in the cute guy couldn't ignore this moment, and of course, appeared next to him again. She started complimenting him again, hoping that it would help somehow, although it was already clear that she might not even try. Yana talked to her a little. She made it clear that her behavior was unnecessary, that it was inappropriate, and in general, they were already leaving. At the same time, these two know each other very well, and I understand that this is not the end of it. In the near future, the girl will expect anything from her friend and will be ready for it. They used to have a very good relationship. There was nothing much to envy about each other, but now that they have matured, everything has changed a little. Ray is very glad that the lady is standing up for him. If he weren't in such a position, he would have dealt with them a long time ago. But as it is, he can't do anything. And in the meantime, they can't even get there normally in a carriage. The girl starts to show too much initiative. She had already taken off the clothes he was slightly covering himself with. He thought that now no one could see them anyway, and they could do what she had been missing for a long time. Yana only asked him not to make any unnecessary sounds so as not to confuse the driver. She takes her other one to the most sensitive places. Naturally, he likes it, although lately there have been too many of such moments. He doesn't react the same way as before, but still, it's better than sitting in one place and calmly driving back. The girl is very soft and gentle with him again, as if she is not a tyrant at all. He likes her like this much more. Now she even has a different look. It's somehow warmer, the kind that can only be seen on special occasions. I wonder what this could mean. She changes right before his eyes, but she is the kind of person who is impossible to read. She never shows or tells anything. He's already gotten used to some things, but the fact that sometimes she's too insatiable already bothers him a little. He didn't have time to rest after her recent touches, as she again touches some places. Although perhaps this is a punishment, only a little hidden, so that he mistakenly thinks that she has changed, that she has started to treat him differently. In any case, it is too early to draw conclusions. With all this, she looks so intently into his eyes as if analyzing every emotion. Ray was a little tired. He even lay on her shoulder and apologized in advance if it was too wrong on his part. There is nowhere else to lie down here. But she did not say anything bad to him in response, which is very surprising and somehow strange. During the whole time they hardly talked, they just looked at each other. Each had their own thoughts, which remain thoughts. One only has to remember the period when they were just getting to know each other and getting used to each other. Now everything is very different. He became more docile, more patient, although he probably didn't expect himself to be able to get used to such a life, where his mistress will be a person who has been an enemy all his life. Now he allows her everything and even more. Ray didn't have time to rest before she again extended her hand to that place, and this time it was already very unpleasant. Each time she does it more and more rudely, as if on purpose, but he endures it and does not react to it in any way. If at first it turned out that this was some kind of gift, some kind of reward, then each time he no longer thinks so. Now, the more often she does it, the more painful it feels, and her touches become less pleasant. At this point, he can no longer remain silent. He begins to hint that he is in pain, although most likely, she already understands this and may even be doing it on purpose. The girl didn't react to this at all. She made it clear that his words no longer meant anything. This is how he is starting to recognize her. In any case, everything is not as bad as it could have been. In such situations, he remembers his first day. That was a real horror, and now everything is within the limits of tolerable. The main thing is that she doesn't develop new strength and a desire to show what she's capable of and who he is to her. I wonder when was the last time she moved on to the other syllables. Lately, she's only been doing Ray, and it's like she's not paying attention to the others, which is unfair. Finally, after some time, she herself fell asleep. She didn't notice how it happened, and it's for the best. He even managed to rest with her. The road was calm, without potholes and other troubles along the way. The weather was still sunny. The guy sometimes woke up to admire the view and then fell asleep anyway, and this happened several times in a circle. He also tried to discreetly smell her hair. It smells so nice that you want to do it very often. Ray has no idea how she achieved such a result. It's not just her hair that smells, but her whole body and even her clothes. Meanwhile, they have already returned home. The girl has a meeting with the Empress planned for today. Probably Her Majesty wants to know how things are with Ray. This time, the girl won't have to hide anything. She treats him much better and will probably be happy to tell him about it. The Empress didn't say anything about her calling her at such a late hour, and Yana has nothing against it. She also usually finds it convenient to see someone closer tonight. It's much more convenient than rushing and putting off all her daytime affairs to see someone in the middle of the day. It is not yet clear what they want to discuss. The only thing that remains unchanged is that the Empress, as usual, is drinking her tea. There is even very interesting information. Some people have never seen her without a cup of tea in her hand. This is such a funny fact about Her Majesty. Yana couldn't help but tell that she saw her friends today, and one of them is very interested in Ray. The Empress could not even imagine that the guy would be so in demand. And then she admitted that she herself sometimes thinks about how right she was to give him away. Everyone understands that he is very handsome, but since the Empress gave him to Yana, now she is his mistress, and everyone admits it. Her Majesty doesn't even hint that she would like to return it, because that's not the custom. She simply came to terms with her mistake and accepted it. This is very pleasing because it turns out that even if the Empress cannot influence this, then some friend of Yana, even more so. And then the topic of conversation shifted a little in another direction. The girl began to demand that Yana start treating him even better. And she explained this by saying that he was still one of the best she could give her as a gift. That is, it was better to take care of him. Even though the girl is trying to do this, it is very unusual for her to hear this. It is like a challenge, and she herself became interested in whether she would be able to do this at all. Before there was not a drop of kindness in her, and now the Empress orders her to become kinder. The only good thing is that this is only in relation to one person. Otherwise, Yana would definitely not have agreed. But that's what she thinks. After all, the Empress's order is not subject to any refusals or doubts. Then, before they knew it, they started discussing his beauty. The color of his hair, eyes, body structure. Everything about him was perfect. Although the girl didn't notice it in the first days, it was only from the time when others started telling her about it that she really began to think that Her Majesty had given her a very good gift and that it should be appreciated. The topics changed very quickly, basically, as always. And the conversation went very slowly because everyone was tired after a hard day and in no hurry because there was nothing else to do. Meanwhile, the guy's in his place as usual. This time, they even gave him a small blanket. It's not very warm, but at least it covers what is needed. And also, he now has the pillow he's been dreaming about all this time, and now he has it. Ray doesn't sleep on purpose. He thinks that the lady can come to him at any moment, even though they've seen each other enough today. It doesn't mean anything yet. He can't be sure of anything. He just stopped thinking about it when she appeared, as if from nowhere. I wonder what she will tell him, why she came, and how long she will have to hold back. It's amazing how she didn't get tired at all, and didn't go to bed and found the strength to come to him in the basement. Unlike what usually happens, Ray wasn't afraid of her, and even reacted more or less calmly. She says that she came to him just like that, to check in before going to bed. Although if he had heard this a few days earlier, he would never have believed it. And now it sounds very plausible, especially since the Empress herself asked her to be softer with him, and even to court him a little. If only he knew that. Naturally, there were some unpleasant surprises. Although some time has passed, it is still not enough, but she climbs in there again. This time she has another item that he hates and even looks in its direction. It is the same ring, because of which he suffered like never before in his life. Also, why did you put a special cover on it? Then lock this cover with a key. Only there is one unpleasant moment. This cover is metal and very much squeezes where there should be complete freedom. This looks like another hidden test, but that's not bad either, because it could have been much worse. After that, she took out some belt and put it on his neck, said that she liked it better this way, and that he looks much more attractive in it than without it, only Ray is not thrilled about it. Then she called him very cute, handsome, and made a couple more compliments, and for the first time she looked at him kindly. It was one of the most pleasant looks of hers that he had ever seen, and he had seen a lot, and he certainly had something to compare it to. Yana can be so different. He himself is already confused whether he likes it or not, but it is better this way than for her to always be aggressive. In the first days, the girl forbade him to even move. She gave him real nightmares, and fortunately, now everything is completely different. But he rejoiced too soon. She put those terrible bells on him again, which ring with every slightest movement. It was very unpleasant. If there were no these bells, everything would be fine. But with them, the night turned into a continuous punishment. At the moment when she was about to leave, Ray remembers that she actually promised him something, and it seemed like everything went fine. So she shouldn't have done all this to him, especially put on those horrible bells. When she stopped to ask what he had just said, the guy wondered if it was worth hinting at all and was very confused because her look was already far from kind. Now any little thing could anger her. I would like to at least say that he is feeling a lot of pressure in some places, but this could be a mistake and he has remained silent again. Although she has been more understanding lately, after such a hard day, she is not in the mood and it would be wrong to take risks. He thought that, in principle, he had suffered so much during all this time that spending the night in all this would not be so difficult. Moreover, maybe she will come back tomorrow and take it all off in the morning, or maybe not, but it is never too late to hope. Ray noticed that she was somehow tired, although before, even late at night, she felt more or less normal. He would like to help, but now it is better not to touch her, and this is a fact. If she wants, she will cope on her own and go to rest early, especially since for now, it is not his business. Now it is better to think about yourself. And so the day came to an end. The guy felt very sorry that he didn't take a risk and didn't ask her to take it all off. But as it is, it was his choice and he made it. This time, he doesn't even plan to go to bed to rest. He will probably think about a lot of things before going to bed, although he usually fell asleep as soon as he had the opportunity. Besides, he has all these devices on him, because of which it is impossible to sleep normally personally. The guy quickly got used to the good and cannot accept that he has to suffer like this again. Although it still can't be compared to what he experienced before, even in this situation, he will have to look for something good, and it is there. She didn't even make fun of him. The whole day was relatively easy, only if you don't take into account the morning and those terrible girlfriends whom he will remember for a very long time. It was impossible to imagine, but someone returned to him and even brought dinner. Apparently, the conversation with him by the Empress had a very positive effect on how they would treat him now. Despite it being so late, when everyone should have been resting, someone cooked dinner and someone else brought it. Although he didn't ask for anything like that, apparently this is Yana's order, who if she promises something, she always does it. The most unpleasant thing was that when this man saw the guy like that, he dared to say that he didn't know that they had a dog. Ray immediately realized that it was all because of the leash that the mistress put on his neck. It sounded so humiliating that he immediately wanted to take it off. So the guy did. He thought he'd better put it back on after dinner, although he shouldn't have cared what these people were telling him in the first place. He threw the object on the floor, asked to give him food quickly. Otherwise, he would complain that they called him names and threatened to leave him without dinner. Finally, he's going to eat something. He hasn't been fed all day, and this food turns out to be even tastier than everything he's eaten before. There are all the necessary spices. There is salt, the food is warm, everything is wonderful, like in the good old days, when he didn't even think about such basic things. So he sat at the table for a very long time. He didn't want to go to bed. He would have to try hard to find a comfortable position for sleeping because there were objects all over his body that would interfere with this. He even came up with different activities for himself, but everything became boring. He really wanted to sleep, but it just didn't work out. He doesn't understand how the girl could do this to him because she saw how tired he was and how important this dream was to him. But in the end, she only made it worse, as if he was guilty of something, and she can't say what exactly. Ray had already imagined how comfortably he could lie on the bed, how he could toss and turn as he pleased, but he could no longer even dream about it. Something still didn't suit her, or maybe she just forgot what they hadn't agreed on. The pain makes him want to just break everything around him, smash, hit. He already imagines how tired he will be tomorrow, and this irritates him the most. Today was a great opportunity to get some sleep, but nothing like that will happen, and perhaps this was the main punishment instead of coming up with something during the day. Apparently at that moment, when she doesn't come to him, or everything looks as if she pities him, Most likely, the girl simply spent her energy on others. She has nothing left for him. As luck would have it, the assistants came one after another. I would have liked to be alone and calm, but everything was just the opposite. All they do is laugh at him, say that's what he deserves, and then quickly leave as if nothing happened. They really enjoy ruining his mood, although if they were in the same room with him, they would hardly stop saying such things and behaving like that. He simply doesn't have the strength to react to this. They are all the same and are just waiting for him to lose his temper, and then the mistress will punish him for it. It probably wouldn't hurt him to find out what order the Empress gave his mistress, but the guy is constantly thinking that the times when she was cruel to him might return. Most likely, if this happens again, he simply won't survive it. He simply won't have the strength for it. Somehow he managed to lie down on the bed. It was still very uncomfortable, but he had to fall asleep. Otherwise, his head would hurt badly in the morning. Pictures appear in his mind of when he felt good with her, when she was not the way he was used to, when she first felt sorry for him, when she stopped beating him and stopped paying attention to his unnecessary movements for which she used to punish him. That carriage ride, he had a special feeling, and now he misses it very much. Although he himself does not understand when he managed to become so attached to her. Because from the first day, I was sure that he would hate her and would hate her more and more with each day. But in the end, everything is a little different. Mentally, he understands that she is a terrible person. But his heart tells him something completely different, and it is impossible to resist. And what's most interesting is that he got used to her making fun of him. He even wanted a little pain, and sometimes he even wanted cruelty. Ray doesn't believe that he even has such thoughts and desires. He probably just got used to it and began to miss the sea of emotions, although they were not the most pleasant. But still, it was unforgettable. If you look at the situation from the other side, if there was a choice to suffer for several hours, as before, or to rest peacefully, as now, it is unlikely that he would choose the first option. And also, out of boredom, out of habit, he begins to pinch himself in the places where she did it. Before he couldn't stand it, but now he does everything with his own hands. It's hard to believe, but it wasn't enough for him. Ray looked at the liquid wax that had melted from the candle and thought that he needed to repeat at least a little of what he missed. He dipped his fingers in there, then touched them to a very sensitive part of the body, or rather, to two parts. It wasn't very pleasant, but in any case, he wasn't forced to do it. He did it all himself of his own free will. Moreover, over time, he even liked doing it. He repeated the same thing several times without realizing it. This is what habit means. If he had been told before that over time he would hurt himself, he would never have believed it. But now, this is what is really happening. The guy is sweating again. His face is already wet. His body is wet, but he continues as if he has no way to stop. From the outside, it looked very strange. But in the meantime, he had already gone to bed and was even able to lie down comfortably. As soon as I closed my eyes, all the memories appeared again. Yana, pain, fear, hatred, calm, then pain again, and so on in a circle. It seems like he can't be alone anymore when she's not around. It's some kind of habit that doesn't seem very normal from the outside. He is already really going crazy. He has become so attached to her that he is already hurting himself, just like she did. The last few nights, I even got up and put that very collar on myself, just so as not to upset her tomorrow morning. Instead of thinking about how to escape from here, as before, he hurts himself and gets pleasure from it. It sounds crazy, but that's how it all happens in reality. The lady seemed to have charmed him, and now he depends on her in every sense of the word. It's very difficult to discern how much he hears himself, because it's possible that it's simply the result of some ingredient that could have been slipped into his food. He is no longer embarrassed by the conditions he finds himself in, that tomorrow the same thing awaits him as today, and maybe even worse. On the contrary, he is waiting for this and eagerly wants to see her, to look into her eyes and hear the voice that he misses madly. The next day has come. It is now morning, and as expected, they brought him his first meal, breakfast, which means that now everything will be on schedule and not just once a day. And also what is important, the food will be tasty and hot. It is very good that his life is starting to get a little better, but it is still not what suits him. It's strange that the lady never shows up. He even started to be jealous of her with others, because most likely, when she was with him too often, she paid little attention to them, and now everything will be the other way around. She will visit them more often and come to him less. As soon as he seriously thought about it, all the mood disappeared. Nothing bad happened. He wound himself up and even spoiled half the food, which he didn't even finish. It got to the point where he was already screaming for her to come back to him, to give him at least a little attention. From the outside, it looks a little crazy. It seems that when she comes back, he will like absolutely everything, without exception, that she decides to do with him. But there is no one. Only one assistant came to him, and he didn't even hint where the lady is now and whether she is awake at all. If before he had a desire to run away in order to get free, Now he wants to run away in order to come to her room and make sure that she is not with someone else now. Meanwhile, some assistant was passing by him. He didn't even plan to stop, but the guy grabbed him by the hand and warned that if he didn't answer one question right now, he wouldn't go anywhere from here. It was very unexpected. That person didn't even have time to react and was very scared, and Ray only needs to know where his mistress is. He replied that he had no idea where she was now, and as soon as he found out, he would definitely let her know. But after such an incident, it was unlikely that he would even come here. And most likely, next time he will ask to be replaced because he no longer wants to experience such emotions because it is too much. He miraculously managed to break away. He went about his business, although he himself was shaking and could not comprehend what had just happened. The first thought that came to his mind was to complain to Yana, because if this happens again and again, he will never come back here. And she will have to find a person who will tolerate this madman, although most likely this is already the case. Some time passed, it was time for lunch, and after making sure that Ray was tied up this time, only after that he was able to go to him through the door. This time the guy is calmer. He came to his senses a little and realized that this is too much. If he reacts this way every time someone approaches him, they will stop bringing him food, and that is not in his interests. The assistant's eyes are already very tense. His hands are shaking. He even almost dropped the tray several times. That this would be the end of it, Ray admitted that he had acted too roughly. But no, he waited until the man came even closer and hit him with all his might. He explained this by the fact that he did not invite Yana with him, but he really hoped for this and could not wait for someone to return with her. If before they called her a tyrant, now he looks even more like someone who likes to mock everyone he meets. Now this assistant will definitely not come back here under any circumstances, even if he has to change jobs or make some sacrifices. It's interesting to imagine and see what will happen when he finally sees her. Will he be as brave as he is now? The girl can't even imagine how he can stay here without her. It's already a little abnormal, but he doesn't notice it yet. It is not yet clear whether he is waiting for her to appear just like that, or maybe he is waiting for her to hurt him, or, on the contrary, to please him. And in the meantime, that very moment had arrived, which he had been waiting for since yesterday evening. For him, it was a whole test, and she doesn't even know about it. Calmly approaches him closer and closer. Although it is possible that now it is not only her who can be called crazy, but also him. He already looks at her as if she were food that he has not eaten for several days. This time the girl didn't dress up much. She came in what she woke up in, and he even liked it. She looks very gentle, beautiful, but now it is more interesting not about this, but about how everything will go, because perhaps she has already been told everything, and now he will answer for it. Yana asks why he is so calm, although before he trembled every time he saw her on the horizon. It's hard to believe, but this time she didn't even have to ask him for anything. He himself took the appropriate pose that she usually asked him to do. For her, it was a real surprise. He can't stand it anymore. He wants her to touch him somewhere and continue talking. She can't hide her surprise. She expected to see frightened eyes, but saw something else. He is only glad that she has appeared. He already wants her to get down to business as soon as possible, even if it will end up hurting him terribly. It is not yet clear whether she will do things differently to make him suffer not from pain, but from the fact that she is not there. She might think that he is doing this on purpose so that she will think that he wants this. In any case, all that remains is to watch. To begin with, she ordered him to stop talking and reminded him of how she had previously punished him for such impudence. The guy understood everything. He didn't think that everything would happen so abruptly, but for now he is delighted because the main thing is that she is here and will definitely not leave soon. For now, Yana stands aside trying to understand what is happening. Today he is completely different. He does not look like himself, and this confuses her very much. At some point, he even felt offended that she was so rude to him, which meant that he still wanted to see her tender. That very feeling that he was ready to endure even pain was deceptive. He likes it when it doesn't cause pain, but just makes it pleasant or at least doesn't go away. It just so happened that today she has a lot of energy. She is not as tired as she was yesterday, which means he is very unlucky. And yet she made a very pleasant surprise for him. Although he had already forgotten about it, the girl took off that very cover, which seemed like some kind of incredible pleasure. It's amazing that she even remembered about it. He didn't even have to hint about it, and that's good. Now she asked to look her straight in the eyes, to be silent, and not to make a single sound until she ordered to talk again. All this did not last long. She suddenly wanted to hurt him a little, to hit him in a place that she had not touched for a long time. This time her blow is very strong. It feels like it was done by some man with strong hands. It got to the point that he already started begging her to stop, thereby breaking the rule of silence, and it was very much in vain. The girl said that he wouldn't get any concessions from her today. Today is a new day, which means everything will be new. She even specifically left all the other servants alone. That is, as he wanted, She would spend the whole day with him from beginning to end. Ray really wanted to hear this from her, but now he is far from happy, rather the opposite. This time, she does not spare him at all. His eyes start to roll back in pain. If the guy only knew what awaits him after her appearance, he would never have wished for something like this. It was better to suffer in silence and calm than to experience this horror again, which is also impossible to stop at will. Only she controls everything. She has a very calm look again, absolutely indifferent, although he expected something completely different from her and is now very disappointed. Ray can't even imagine that she will come and mock him as usual. He thought that something had changed between them. But no, everything is the same. Now it's worth remembering that her gentle look and good behavior during the day does not mean that next time everything will be the same. She is an unpredictable person, and it is high time to remember this. From the first day, unfortunately, he realized this only now. The worst thing was when he expected tenderness from her, but got exactly the same thing. Only the opposite, everything that he didn't want the most. She even stopped talking to him as tenderly as last time. Yana is no longer as harmless as she was in the carriage when she slept and stroked his face. At some point, she got tired of all this. The girl even thought about asking her assistants to come up with some punishments. She no longer wants to repeat herself. She wants to do something new, but her imagination is failing her. Not even a single thought comes to mind about what to do. And then something happened that she didn't expect from him. He starts hurting himself, even screaming and crying because of it. She immediately asked him to continue and not stop until she ordered. The girl did not think that he was so resourceful and was surprised that she had not thought of this before. Yana looks at this as if there is a person in front of her, dressed and calmly eating his breakfast, as if nothing unusual is happening. Ray turned red. He already asked her to give the order to stop, but she doesn't do it and wants to bring him to the peak of emotions, especially since he himself started doing it, and she didn't ask him. Then she comes closer and closer to him, looks him in the eye and says that if he stops for even a second, then she will order him to do this for an hour. He understood everything and immediately regretted that he started to come up with something himself. Probably next time he won't do it like that. It was a mistake, but that's not all. She started squeezing something so hard that he wanted to hit her right then and there so that she would completely lose consciousness. He was lucky that he developed stamina. He learned to endure things that were impossible to endure before. Although it would be better if he didn't have such situations in his life, because of which he would become what he became. In the meantime, she still allowed him to stop, and since his imagination worked so well, she asked him to come up with something else, because she was too lazy to do it. And then he realized that it was not just a mistake, it was the biggest mistake he could ever make. Now he has to figure out how to hurt himself, although maybe it's even for the best, since at least he has the opportunity to control the situation and not think up anything too cruel. She already says that he has little time left. Otherwise, she will order him to do what she ordered the seriously guilty servants to do. He assumed that if she pressed very hard on different parts of his body with one finger, it would be completely normal, but he was very wrong. She immediately understood this idea and began to press where he did not even suppose, and then praised and even promised a small surprise for this, which he would definitely like, but she did not say what it would be. Just recently, Ray was going crazy, wanted to see her, and now he wants her to go somewhere far away and never come back. He is already confused about how he feels about her. Sometimes she only seems good, but now he doesn't think about her like that anymore. She hasn't changed at all lately. She remains as cruel as she was all this time, and he was just thinking in vain that something had changed. He turned out not to be so special, even though the guy is a little more handsome than everyone else. But that doesn't mean that Yana will treat him better. It only means that she will come to him more often, as has been happening for the last few days. I wonder when he will understand that her behavior should be ignored, and if at some point she is nice to him, it is even worse than if she treated him as usual. It's very simple. She is a tyrant and he is her servant, and such people cannot have normal relationships. Each of these servants should know their place and not hope for a miracle. Nothing else like that exists in their lives. But that's not the most interesting part. At first she thought that she could leave, but then she stayed and still showed that very tenderness that he was waiting for. Yana came closer, almost sat on him, started to act as if she was hinting at something, but he was afraid to even smile and touch her once again. The guy asked that if she wanted to hurt him, it would be better to do it right now and not put it off for later. He won't be able to stand it if he relaxes, and then she will cause pain that will feel much more painful than physical pain. It will be even harder for him recently because he already has some feelings, affection, but she hasn't gotten any better. It's all just in his head. He sees her as better than she really is. Unable to restrain himself, he begs her for a kiss, ready to endure any punishment for it. He simply asks to do it. Otherwise, Ray will definitely go crazy. She had never heard from him so many words, the mention of which had previously made him feel humiliated and disgusted. Then she slowly took his hand, looked into his eyes, said nothing, and began to move her head closer and closer to him, but very slowly. It was so tender, just like he likes. Ray stopped thinking about everything else and even allowed himself to take her by the waist. He feels very good now. For this, he is ready to endure anything, just to kiss her and relax. I wonder what this means, and does she kiss others who ask her to? Because if so, then there can't be any feelings here. He had thought about it before, but at some point these thoughts just disappear. He just wants to do it, no matter what. How he likes to smell her body, to touch her with his voice, to touch her body. Sometimes she doesn't allow it, but there are moments when it's impossible to restrain oneself. The guy doesn't even know if she likes it or not. Maybe she's just pretending to be so unapproachable, but in reality, she's enjoying it. The girl starts talking to him, and he is so drawn to her that he doesn't even listen to what she says. The way he feels with her now and how it was before are two completely different feelings. The guy has noticeably changed. Now the lady seems to have become the meaning of his life. He has forgotten the last time he thought about running away, and most likely, he is not even interested in it. If only he knew what she feels for him, and whether she feels anything at all. Her lack of emotions sometimes complicates the situation, and it is very important for him to know how she really feels about him. Although the girl didn't order anything like that, he starts kissing her feet. He does it very tenderly and only at his own request. When suddenly she grabs him by the hair and asks when he heard her order him to do something like that, it was a lesson that even pleasant things can't be done to her when it was not required. Only she can do that. In fact, that's what Yana did now. She again extended her hand to the place she liked most about him. Then she asked him to lie down on the floor, relax and enjoy, which he was also really looking forward to. Yana approaches him again, lies down on him, slowly starts kissing him, asks him to make some sounds. And he doesn't even know how much he likes it. When the guy got here on the first day, he couldn't even imagine that she would do this to him. From an excess of emotions, tears flowed from his eyes. His hands began to tremble. But from the thought that even now he cannot touch her anywhere, he is very offended. And in the meantime, the next day came. He didn't even have time to properly wake up and open his eyes when two people approached him and began to take him away in an unknown direction. Ray tries to look around, but he is rarely outside and does not yet understand what will happen next. Naturally, no one tells him anything. There is no point in even asking about it or trying to guess about something. The only thing he sees in front of him is some building, and they are probably leading him straight there. They didn't even put clothes on him. Didn't let him wash up, the guy didn't have breakfast, didn't have time to do anything, didn't even wake up. And when they blindfolded him before entering, he heard some door opening and then they just pushed him forward, as if he had to go further on his own. It was not very respectful towards him. It was ugly on their part, although he did not expect any other attitude from them. Everything around is very similar to the same place where they went after meeting with friends. There is the same pool and very humid air, which means there can't be any important meetings here. Somewhere there is probably Yana. Ray doesn't understand anything. He starts to get nervous, although he never thought in his life that he could be scared with his eyes blindfolded. As one might expect, Yana is waiting for him here, only as is expected in such places. She is wearing a minimum of clothes, or rather, none at all. He asks her what they are doing here, what she has planned, and how necessary it is for him to be here blindfolded. But he is not going to say that he is so scared. Since they are already close enough, she is not shy, sits on his legs, touches him wherever she wants, and it is very unfair that he is categorically not allowed to do the same. She asks him how he likes the atmosphere, as if she had forgotten that he, unlike her, actually doesn't even see anything. You can clearly see how nervous he is, how he wants to take off the bandage as soon as possible. Although it was hardly put on for a couple of minutes, apparently this is the point of this meeting. One can only guess what the girl has come up with this time. For him, only one thing is important, if only it doesn't hurt. He has already become unaccustomed to serious punishments, to unbearable pain, and he really wouldn't want to experience the same thing again. When suddenly Yana starts to sit on him in a way she has never sat on him before. Not just like that, but a little differently. He didn't even immediately understand what it meant. He really wanted to see it, but unfortunately, without her permission, nothing would work. The lady took a piece of soap, began to rub his body, and then slipped a little and was surprised at how pleasant it was. In those places where she went over it with soap, she liked touching it even more than before. He was also so pleased that he was already begging to take off the bandage, just to look at her beautiful body for 1 second. If you remember how such situations usually ended, more often than not she hurt him afterwards, and just as much as he enjoyed it before. It didn't last long. Then she just poured water on him, washed off the foam, started walking somewhere and warned that it wasn't over. He already thought that maybe the lady wanted to give him a massage, but how wrong he was, and now it was better to prepare. Because she took 2 clothespins for him, which she used to hit the most sensitive parts of his body, so that the guy would scream so loudly that it could be heard even on the street. This once again confirms the fact that after something good, something bad is sure to follow. It can't be any other way. Then she specifically asked why he was screaming like that, as if she hadn't done anything so painful or unpleasant to him. Then, as usual, she asked him to take that very pose and tied his hands so that suddenly he couldn't resist. After this, Yana asked him to call her his queen, to tell her how good he feels now and that he can't imagine his life without her. That's what he said because it has recently become true. And now there is an opportunity to say it. It turns out that all this was necessary so that she could wash him on the other side, where his back and everything else is. On the one hand, it was very nice, but those clothespins embarrass him so much that he wants to tear all those ropes and finally unhook them. Ray screams as if he is about to lose his voice. It is very hard to bear, considering that he has been relatively resting for several days and has already forgotten what it is like. If only it weren't for these clothespins, everything would be fine. This procedure can be perceived as a massage, but they ruin everything. Everything happens more or less as usual. As soon as she gets even a little closer to his feet, her hands immediately reach out to where she touches him most often. This time she got carried away with everything that is below the back. She began to knead his muscles, give him a massage. At first he felt very uncomfortable, even disgusted. But then he realized that this was not the worst thing she could do to him, so he had to endure it, because the clothespins were much worse than this whole massage. It's a bit unpleasant when she tells him to be quiet, when he can't keep quiet at all. She changes her mood too quickly, first asking him to scream, and then forbidding him to even make any sound. When he listens to her and does as she says, she always praises him for it, and this time she even patted him on the head. Although it would be better if she didn't do that. Every touch at a time when he is already in pain feels simply awful and unbearable. And she, as usual, looks at him as if nothing is happening, and all this seems something ordinary and uninteresting. It's not surprising, because she's been doing the same thing every day for many years with different people. Now it's hard for her to come up with something new, because she's already tried everything. Meanwhile, Yana already starts hugging Ray, says that he is a good boy, he did everything as she said. And for this, she decided to please him. She took off those very clothespins from him. He felt that very relief that he had been dreaming about all this time, although he thought that everything would be like with that cover that she left for the whole night. It was so nice that I can't even describe it in words. Ray kissed her shoulder and then immediately apologized because he remembered that they had already discussed this. The girl reminded him again that on the first day she literally saw hatred in his eyes, but now she likes him more. He is so docile and obeys, even if he does not want to do it. He doesn't care anymore how he looks in front of her. He just wants something basic, for her to spare him and forget about those horrible clothespins forever, at the very least. He is ready to tell her what she wants, to do what she says, and in return, he only needs one, more or less normal attitude. The guy learned to endure pain, but sometimes it happens that he wants to cry and fall through the ground. It was so unpleasant for him sometimes. And now he really wants to know what else she has come up with, because what he hates most is when there is complete uncertainty ahead and all that remains is to guess. But usually he ends up being disappointed. As the lady asked, he is silent, just waiting for her instructions and not even moving, because today you can expect anything from her. The humid air makes it very hard to breathe. There is almost no normal air here. You want to go outside, but it is better not to talk about it. At some point, she had already taken off the bandage, and the guy had forgotten that it was on him at all and didn't pay attention to it. Then she untied his hands, and it turns out she tied them so tightly that he had marks left. But so far, he doesn't feel anything like that. All these painful sensations are mixed together. He doesn't feel anything separately, and it's not even clear whether it's good or bad. She had another idea to go into the water with rose petals. Yana pulls him along and promises that it will be very nice. He looked towards the clothespins, saw that she wasn't taking them with her, relaxed, and of course, agreed to go further. It is unlikely that she will come up with anything unpleasant in the water, especially since it is very warm, and this is exactly what is needed after the painful sensations. Usually it was a mistake, but he had already begun to imagine how she would please him, although maybe she just wanted to relax with him and was not going to come up with anything. He asked how she's doing, trying to lighten the mood a little, and it didn't occur to him that it would have been better if he hadn't said it. Lucky that the girl didn't pay attention to it. She answered his question and then started asking the same thing. They couldn't have a normal conversation. Everyone was in their own thoughts. She had one thing, he had another, as usual. The atmosphere around is very romantic. He likes everything very much. If only she was a little open in terms of talking freely with him on different topics. Yana invited him to the pool. She herself is silent, although she herself forbade him to say anything without her permission. All that remains is to silently look at her, take advantage of the moment, and relax while there is an opportunity. Today, she didn't say that she would go anywhere, which means they will stay together all day until the night. It's strange, but the water in the pool doesn't cool down, as if there is some kind of system that controls the temperature, and he really liked it. Lately, he rarely manages to warm up, but now he feels great, as if on some kind of short vacation. Yana said that she comes here very often. She loves the humid air and warm water. Therefore, others are forbidden to come here. She used to bring her other servants here, but lately she doesn't take them out anywhere and leaves them in the basements. They stopped interesting her. Ray had figured it out long ago. Sometimes he likes it, but more often than not, he has to suffer because of it. The more attention she pays to him, the greater the risk that one day he will experience all the circles of hell, and she will do it so calmly, as if everything is fine. In the end, they weren't there for a long time. At the end, the girl asked the assistant to do his hair because she doesn't know how to do it herself. He was given special clothes, so he will have to meet some people, and he doesn't like it anymore. The last time he saw strangers, it ended terribly and left a terrible imprint on his memory. Now every outing to people is as painful for him as everything else. He is already accompanied by 3 assistants. They, as usual, don't tell anything. Ray tried to find out at least something, but nothing worked out. Entering some room, he saw a table, 2 chairs, a spacious room, but for now there was no one there. The door was immediately closed behind him. He was left here alone. He began to look around. It is a very light and spacious room, and this is already pleasing. At least it is not dark here. The door turned out to be locked. He is not going to leave here. He just checked out of curiosity. Then he saw that there was a window here. He looked out of it, but there was no one around who was coming to meet him. The weather is very sunny there. It would be nice to stay outside longer. It's just a pity that the lady chose this room and not some gazebo. Now is just the time when it is neither cold nor hot. The street smells of flowers, but he can only admire this through the window. How he would like to go where he wanted himself, without asking anyone and enjoying the freedom he had before. His eyes even slightly teared up, but when he fought on the battlefield, he couldn't even imagine how it would all turn out. And if he had known, he wouldn't have given the enemy the slightest chance to win. In any case, it's good that he is at least sometimes released from prison, while the rest of them never even leave and are used to living in the dark. They are not allowed to go out anywhere. They don't even eat as well as he does, and are limited in many ways, just as he was initially. Even some of the assistants feel worse here than he does. That's why they treat him so badly, because at the very least, they always only get cold food. They don't have time to eat during the day and have to wait until night when no one demands anything from them and there's no need to do anything. And in the meantime, since there is no one here anyway, no one is in a hurry. He decided to lie down on the bed. It should be just the best one he sleeps on. The mattress here is so soft that Ray has already forgotten that such a thing exists. And this isn't even the mistress's room. It's interesting to imagine what kind of bed she has. Surely she has the best of everything in her chambers that could possibly be there. He has no doubt about that. It is unlikely that she would have chosen something average for herself, especially considering the kind of person she is. Since he didn't get enough sleep today, his eyes closed by themselves, he wants to relax and lie down on the bed, and also ask that no one disturb him. As soon as he thought about what a pleasant dream this could be, images immediately appeared in his head. That Yana is nearby, that she is stroking his body, and it is so good with her that he wants to see her again as soon as possible. All these dark desires do not leave his thoughts. They only become more, especially considering how often she appears in front of him lately without clothes. The girl seems to be preparing him for something and dragging out time so that he wants it more and more. If so, then she's very good at it. This guy is literally crazy about her, even though he understands that any meeting can be either pleasant or, on the contrary, unbearable from beginning to end. If earlier, when she hurt him, he hated her more and more each time, now it's as if he doesn't care. He learned to tolerate a lot, began to pay attention only to what she does good for him. Even now, just thinking about what could have happened between them makes him unable to relax and sleep normally, while he still has the opportunity. It also happens that he has different desires that he is afraid to even think about, because perhaps she might even find out about this and punish him sooner or later. Literally half an hour passed, the door opens, the lady comes in and another one of her assistants, whom he had already seen somewhere. He felt awkward that they saw him lying on the bed. Although what else could he do if they left him locked in the room for such a long time? Today, the lady is in uniform. It is clear that she has a lot of things to do, and probably he can be useful to her, although it is difficult to imagine how exactly. Ray saw something they brought into the room. It caused him the most terrible emotions. Now it seems that she hardly needs help, most likely. This will be another day when he will suffer from pain and fear of getting hurt on this blade. He is no longer in any mood. Everything was fine, but exactly until the moment when something he is already familiar with appeared here. She asked him why he was reacting like that, as if she had brought him breakfast and he was scared and refused to eat it. The day he last suffered such punishment was the worst day of his entire stay here. He is ready for anything, for any test, but not this. This is the worst thing she could choose for him today. Lucky that he learned to restrain himself. The guy just started to believe that it was not what he thought. Otherwise, there would be no point in putting him in these clothes and even appearing in this room. He himself was surprised how he managed not to get nervous ahead of time. Maybe they just brought this item here, and it doesn't mean that they will find a use for it today. Literally, a couple of minutes later, the girl went off somewhere again to do her own thing, which means maybe he understood everything correctly and there is nothing to be afraid of yet. He had time to calm down, and it was very timely. It's strange that she doesn't say anything to him, although that's usually how it happens. He even liked being there naturally. You can at least admire the beautiful view from the window. I would like to have breakfast, eat something tasty, and wash it down with at least some plain water, but they haven't brought him anything like that yet. Lately, it happens to him that sometimes he wants to eat a lot of things from the very morning, and sometimes he remains hungry until the very evening, and even forgets that he did not have time to eat. Meanwhile, Yana returned. She said that she had a lot of things to do today, so she was only able to come in the evening, and that was very good. She asked to bring tea, but only for herself, and she didn't even think about him, as if she had forgotten what she had promised the Empress a few days ago. He tries to ask different questions to find out how calm this evening will be, but she understood everything. And she doesn't tell anything on purpose, leaving the intrigue, and she also asked if he really expects something from her and can't sit still. Ray replied that she had misunderstood him, that he hadn't meant it at all, as if she herself didn't know, that he wasn't expecting anything and didn't want it to start. Meanwhile, she was already tired of her tea, but since there was still some left, she offered Ray to finish it, but he immediately refused. He felt very unpleasant. It would have been better if she had asked for 2 cups right away and not offered him at the very end, when she herself was tired of finishing it to the end. The only thing that makes him happy is that he sees how tired she is. She barely even looks in his direction. Her eyes are constantly looking down. And with him, it's the other way around. The guy doesn't take his eyes off her, constantly analyzes what he can expect from her next. It's already like a habit that is impossible to get rid of. He already has several ideas about how it will all end, but then his eyes fall on that very object that makes his body tremble and immediately ruins everything. Its sharp edge does not cause the best sensations. Yenna noticed that he felt uneasy, but her reaction still does not make anything clear. The girl has already rested. She has sat in one place for a long time, which means that now she will have to be entertained, or she will do it herself. A couple of minutes later, they found themselves outside. She began to miss the fresh air, and now they are in the gazebo, but this makes him feel calmer. If they stay here, it means that if something happens, a lot of people will see it. Literally everyone who passes by or looks out the window. Ray even forgot to sit down on the chair. He is standing on his feet and seems to be ready to accept the punishment, whatever it may be, unexpectedly. But the girl tries to calm him down. She said that she sees how nervous he is and promised that nothing bad awaits him. It sounded a little dubious. He already knows her too well and understands that everything could be exactly the opposite, no matter how she tries to convince him otherwise. The guy doesn't believe that everything will end peacefully, that he won't even suffer today. It's just impossible. Now he doesn't even dream about it, because she already asked him to take off his jacket, which she was already tired of. It's clear that this won't be the end of it, it's just beginning, and he, out of habit, is preparing for the worst. Ray tries to understand how cold her gaze is, because it directly affects how much pain he will feel after a while. Meanwhile, Yana has already ordered him to take off everything so that she would be more accustomed to looking at him. She likes it that way much more. Naturally, it couldn't be done without a rope on his hands. She tied them first and asked him to enjoy what she was going to do to him now. The guy stands with his back to her. His whole body is already shaking. The more she says that everything will be fine, the more doubts he has that everything will be completely different. That same assistant came. She asked him for something, only in some code words, so that the servant would not understand anything and would not guess anything ahead of time. Then she started pouring some water into the bowl. It was slightly white, not quite transparent. He would have to drink all of it. She doesn't say what it is. She warns that if he has doubts about whether to drink it or not, she will make sure that such doubts and thoughts no longer exist. There is a small difficulty. She tied his hands and he will have to drink this liquid, like dogs do. Just bend over and try to finish it all. Ray resisted for a long time, trying to find out if it was dangerous or not. Yana couldn't stand it, grabbed his head and tilted it right into the bowl, so that he himself would find out what it is, try it, and so that he would not have such unnecessary questions anymore. The girl is not one of those people who likes to wait for a long time, and especially to beg someone for a long time. He must do everything immediately and without hesitation, completely trusting her, even when it is not worth doing. But she hasn't heard him yet. She just wet his face. Ray has wound herself up, and because of this, everything looks scarier than it really is. When she asked him if it was tasty or not, he was even afraid to remain silent. He said that everything was fine if only she wouldn't get angry. He realized his mistake and no longer ignored it, because it would only make things worse for him. Over time, a strange sensation appeared. A slight tingling sensation appeared on her face, and she replied that everything was intended that way. At first, she felt a little sorry for him and wanted to change the liquid to regular water, but now she says that's what he needs. She thinks that she can make another portion, after all. He didn't drink it all to the end, as planned. An assistant comes. He has a huge rope in his hands. Everything is not as bad as it could be, but Ray is not going to enjoy the time. The assistant said that he chose the thickest rope, the most suitable, in his opinion, so that it would squeeze everything that was needed well and would not untie prematurely. The lady checked whether this was really the case. It is important to her that everything was of the best quality because a lot depends on it. She wanted to make sure that everything was held as tightly as possible, and when she tied the guy up from head to toe, she made sure that everything was so. For added effect, she wanted to tie his mouth too, so she wouldn't hear any complaints and wouldn't be distracted. Naturally, where would she be without her favorite bells? She never goes anywhere without them because she knows that he doesn't like them the most. It turns out that everything he hates and fears, she really likes, which means that when the guy tried to hide what he was afraid of and what he wasn't, he failed and she still found out his weak spots. It turned out to be much easier than she thought. And in the meantime, she asked him to take the very pose that he also hates, and she forced him to do it very rudely. Today she has the strength for it, although just recently she was sitting in a bad mood and was too lazy to even finish her tea. There was still some liquid left in that teapot. It had cooled down, and the idea came to me by itself to pour the entire contents right onto his back so that everything would flow where it needed to. She asked him to stay still and enjoy it, as if it should be very pleasant. Perhaps everything would be more or less bearable, but those bells only spoil everything. All this has become some kind of routine. He already calmly tolerates her ideas. For him, it no longer looks like a punishment, just a routine for which he prepares every morning. Nothing more. Sometimes it is unpleasant, but you can get used to everything. So he managed to get used to the new life. Although on the first day, he thought that it was impossible and every day would feel like the first. Sometimes the mistress goes too far. She doesn't know how his body works. She is still a girl and very often presses where she shouldn't. There is still something that is beyond the pale, but she doesn't know about it, and he is afraid to say it because in response she might press even harder. Yana promised that nothing terrible will happen today, so we can only hope that everything will end soon. She will let him go, and he can calmly go and rest, and it is desirable to remove those bells that he feels every second. The lady, as if to spite him, comes up and says that she wants to please him, but does exactly the opposite. He hasn't had tears in a long time, and this is an indicator that she is going too far and is deceiving him once again. It would have been better if she had warned him about everything right away, but instead, she only calmed him down and hurt him at the most unexpected moment. For her, all this is just ordinary entertainment. The girl has no idea what it is like to be in his place, but that's not all she's capable of. She's done much worse things with the others before. No one left without serious storage, and some even went crazy. They didn't have such cases when she forgot about someone or did something nice, like for Ray. With them, she is still tougher. All the other servants have been lucky only recently when she shows up to them less often and mainly mocks only one, the new one. At such moments, the guy starts to get very confused. He gets lost and no longer understands how he feels about her. She is a person who can be neutral at first, then a second later she can mock. And after that, she will say that she tried to do everything gently and did not know that everything would turn out like this. By the end of the evening, he doesn't even have the strength to open his eyes. Ray is hungry, exhausted. He wants to drink water and just sleep for at least a few days. As usual, after she heard him, she stepped aside and began to observe how he felt. This was also very humiliating. As usual, right after she had made fun of him, she grabbed him by the head and pulled him towards her with all her might, and started kissing him right on the lips. But there was nothing romantic about it at all. Even he didn't really want it. But maybe if she had at least taken those bells off him, everything would have been different and he wouldn't have been against it. This time she was very gentle. She even stroked his back and looked at him differently, not like just a few minutes ago. This time Ray couldn't hold back anymore. He asked what it was, how she could do one thing first, then the other, still with such a look as if she didn't understand that he might not like it. She explained to him that here only she decides what he likes and what he doesn't. And if she says that he enjoyed it, it means that he didn't suffer, but enjoyed it. And so that he could understand it better. Yana asked her assistant about it, and he completely confirmed her words that if the lady says something, that's how it is, and there can be no other truth. Then she adjusted his bandage. She didn't like that he was talking too much lately and thus hinted at it. This evening lasts so long that she herself is already tired of thinking of all this. But out of habit, she still stays and does not leave him without something memorable. This time she asked him to think of something she could punish him for, but the guy pretended he didn't have any ideas. In fact, he simply already realized his previous mistake and will never answer such a question again. So she had to come up with everything herself. She ordered him to lie face down on the floor, adjusted his blindfold because she knows he will be uncomfortable like that. Yana is clearly not going to let him go. She will torment him a little more so that the guy does not sleep too sweetly. It's not surprising that if at the end she kisses him again and wishes him good night, that would be too much. She wants to make him feel bad so much that she even puts her foot on his face, pressing it so hard that he starts making some sounds. Although she herself hates it when someone dares to touch her face, especially without permission, especially on purpose. Yana doesn't know this, but the bandage on his eyes is a little transparent. Sometimes he can see what she's going to do and what is in her hands. He saw just in time that she had some kind of belt with which she began to hit him on the back and then lower and lower. It was a terrible pain. He barely held back from screaming. It was almost impossible, but he did it. Then she tied some kind of chain to him and started walking with him like some kind of dog, and warned that if she felt for even a second that he was resisting or stopped catching up with her, she would mock him until the morning. This has never happened before. It's some new idea, but he doesn't even know if he likes it or not. The main thing is that it doesn't hurt yet. From the outside, it looks a bit surprising, and he feels about the same. But what can you do? That's his new life. It's good that she doesn't ask him to bark or run all over the territory like a real dog. He definitely wouldn't want that. While she calmly walks straight ahead, not even looking back in his direction, and he still has the opportunity to peek through the bandage to see which way they are heading. Everything around sounds as if they entered some remote place where there is no one, only grass and trees. It turns out that in fact, everything is like that. Apparently, the girl deliberately chose this path so that he would feel like anyone but a human being. Meanwhile, she wanted him to walk faster so that she could see him ahead of her. But since he can't read minds, of course, there were some problems with this. She pulled him very hard on the leash, punished him for not having figured it out himself. Although the only thing he is thinking about now is not to retreat anywhere and not to fall into some pool or something like that. He doesn't like everything that's happening anymore. She's starting to go overboard, although it's already quite late and they should have said goodbye a long time ago. Besides all this, he hasn't eaten anything today. He just accidentally drank some water when she was putting his head in the plate, but that doesn't count. Now the guy definitely doesn't have any warm feelings for her. He wants her to leave him alone as soon as possible and start doing her own thing. Apparently today is the very day when she makes up for everything she didn't manage to do when she was busy. Finally, she stopped and ordered him to do the same. Ray had no idea where they were, if there was anyone nearby and why they came here. His hands and feet are still tied up. He can't move freely and move as he would like. Every second lasts a very long time. He would have fallen asleep long ago, but the mistress is cruel and will not let him leave just like that. She starts tickling him in some places where it feels most sensitive. Ray moved a little. It's quite natural, but she didn't like it. It was as if she didn't want him to react to her touch in any way, and already knew how she would punish him for it. She starts to tug on those very bells that are attached in the most undesirable place that one could imagine. And as usual, she attached them on both sides. Literally out of nowhere, some girls appear. They start laughing at him, discussing his body, probably some of her other friends. He doesn't have the best memories with them. One can only hope that they won't make fun of them, and no one will want to lure him over to their side like some... It's clear that this won't end quickly. Each one must do what she would like to do with him, and he tries to be ready for this. Ray doesn't see anyone in the face, when suddenly the bandage falls off him, or maybe someone specially helped him do it. Today he is convinced that what he hates most is when people laugh at him. It would be better if they did everything silently. But like this, they only make him feel humiliated. It's strange, but all this time his mistress was on the sidelines. She was sitting on some stump, resting and watching all this from the side. Apparently she's had her fill and decided to give this opportunity to others. It looks like she's tired herself, but she's not going to let him relax. You can tell from her eyes that she enjoys watching how other girls treat him, no matter how it sounds. She literally looks at each of them. At their behavior towards him, the lady did not think that it could be so exciting. The main thing is that she doesn't think about starting to do this more often, because anything can happen. Usually she only needs to think about it, and it immediately comes true the next day. It is obvious that each of them liked him very much. This was quite expected and not at all surprising. Everyone around him smiles, talks to him, but they do it to see how easy it is for him to talk while wearing a bandage that prevents him from doing so. Everything that is happening is starting to irritate him. He is already hinting to the lady to let him go, but she seems to be deliberately not even looking in his direction. She calmly admires the evening atmosphere, tries not to be distracted by anything, and she does it very well. And then she felt the hatred with which he looked in her direction, but she still didn't turn around so that he could calm down a little first. Some girls start to push him, If at first they were affectionate with him, now everything is the opposite. They started to allow themselves more and more. Ray is already lying on the floor. He is enduring everything that is happening with all his might and no longer knows how to shout to Yana. It got to the point that they bite him wherever they want. They have no restrictions and he doesn't even have time to keep track of each of them. They see perfectly well how much pain he is in, how hard he can bear everything they do to him. But they still continue. Absolutely nothing bothers them. His eyes wet with tears. The guy simply accepted the fact that they are all tyrants and again began to think about how long he is ready to live in such conditions. Once he realizes that he has been on the street a lot lately, and with his arms and legs untied, he might realize that, unlike before, he now has a much better chance of getting out into freedom. For example, now, Yana is at a relatively large distance, and those girls would hardly be able to stop him. You could just find a way to untie his hands and go in any direction, or rather, run away. Surely, very soon the moment will come when he will try to come up with a plan. But for now, he has gotten used to all this, and it is a pity that he is in no hurry to change anything. Maybe tomorrow the thought will come to him that this can't go on any longer, that something needs to be done about it, that he can live in such conditions for a month at most, and even then with difficulty, and then he needs to look for any way to return to his usual life, which he lived before he ended up here. And in the meantime, you have to endure all these people, humiliate yourself. Yana even allowed them to do whatever they wanted and did not set any restrictions. They discussed this earlier, even before he ended up in that room and waited for her for half an hour. They all look like beautiful, sweet girls, but in reality, they turn out to be real villains who enjoy making fun of a handsome stranger. They act as if they have known him for some time, although it is the first time they have seen him and already dare to treat him like that, even though he is just a servant whose opinion has never been taken into account and will not be taken into account. Sometimes you still need to look at the situation from the outside and remember that any of them could sooner or later end up in his place. Meanwhile, Yana returned. She had already rested. She even had a calm expression on her face as if nothing new was waiting for him. She asked those girls to step aside, wanted to look into his eyes, but he was already closing them and not controlling. He really wants to sleep. It's already late at night. Usually they never stayed so late, and this could have a bad effect on his mood tomorrow and not only her. Instead of finishing it all, she stepped aside again and allowed her friends to continue everything they hadn't managed to do yet. Some even stood in line on purpose and were very happy that they still had time. Everything started again. She went to that same stump, started thinking about her own things and didn't even look in their direction. Yana used to do this very rarely, now she thought. Why not organize such meetings more often? Everything happens very productively. She relaxes, others spend time with pleasure, and Ray, as he should, helps them with this. Some time passed. Finally, she allowed him to be free. For today, all the tests were over. It was a difficult day, which he will remember for a long time. Ray didn't even take off any clothes. He went to bed. They even gave him a cold pack to cool him down a bit. His face was so red and hot. And then something happened that he had been waiting for so long and already thought that he would not wait for anything. They brought him the long-awaited dinner. It was hot. Ray didn't care what was there. He was ready to eat anything, no matter what it was. Everything would have been fine. But the assistant allowed himself to say very offensive words towards him. The guy got so angry that he even sacrificed his food to pour it all on the floor, yell at him, and promise that the lady would definitely find out about it. These assistants are very afraid of such words. He had already learned this and knew how to answer. It was just a pity that he would be left without dinner, and the next meal would be tomorrow morning. And that would be if he was lucky. He immediately turned to the other side, tried to fall asleep, although his stomach was asking for something, but there was nothing left. Everything was left on the floor. He was tormented by the smell of food. He was even able to almost fall asleep and stop thinking about the bad, when suddenly someone appears in his room, and of course, it couldn't be anyone else except Yana, who apparently can't sleep. She lightly touched his shoulder. He wanted to remove her hand as soon as possible and tell her everything he thought about her. Everything is so serious that he did it. Ray stopped thinking well of her. He is ready to endure any punishment, but he will not allow himself to be deceived so easily anymore. According to her, it was supposed to be a very easy day, but only now he realized that he had done too much. He was already thinking of apologizing, but he took a risk and left everything as it was. Suddenly, she would not pay attention to it because of fatigue. Surprisingly, that's exactly what happened. She asked him in a very sweet voice to turn towards her, but he didn't expect that. Could it be that she came to wish him good night? Although she had already said this several hours ago, when he thought that they would not stay there long. His face is so red that it's immediately obvious that he doesn't have time for all these conversations now. He doesn't even expect a kiss from her. As usual, he just wants to be alone and is not at all happy about her appearance. It was very unpleasant, even ugly on her part. Ray was offended and does not try to hide it. I wonder how she will react to this. Although he is already tired of her changing very quickly, and today is the first day when he did not forgive her for this. His look is completely different. He doesn't care what she thinks, why she came, what she needs. For him, this day is already over, and now he thinks only about finally falling asleep. And because he can't tell her this directly, his eyes are filled with tears. Ray can't control himself anymore. He's very tired, and he doesn't care how he looks from the outside. When the lady asked what was the matter, he didn't even look in her direction. He made everything clear with his behavior and thought that this was enough. He is already very annoyed that she came, does not say what she needs, just stands in one place and looks at him, as if she is waiting for something. And then something happened that he never expected from her. Yana begins to tell that when she promised him that everything would go smoothly, she seriously thought that it would happen after all. But then everything happened somehow, that she didn't notice how she forgot about her words and did everything exactly the opposite. It's very good that she understands this, but Ray won't think any better of her. Because of this, he has no guarantee that sooner or later, such a situation won't happen again. In the end, she brought him one portion of soup after all. She couldn't leave him hungry, and it was a real salvation. That's exactly what he needed. After everything he's been through today, emotions are starting to come out. He's in a lot of pain, both inside and out. She will never understand what he is experiencing. She will not even be able to imagine what thoughts the guy falls asleep with every day, what thoughts he wakes up with, and they are all different every time. The girl still dares to mock him. She tests his patience, checks how much and what he is ready to do. If only she would leave him as soon as possible and leave him alone.